Good afternoon. I'm Robert White, Council Member at Large and Chair of the Committee on Housing. Today is Thursday, January 22nd. The time is 2:14 p.m. and we are meeting in room 500 of the John A. Wilson Building, as well as on Zoom. And I'm calling to order this public performance oversight hearing of the committee. I apologize for starting a little late today. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to explain what a performance oversight hearing is and why it matters to our communities. Each year, the council holds performance oversight hearings to look closely at how DC agencies are doing their jobs, whether the money residents put into the city is coming back to them through real services, whether programs are reaching the people they are meant to serve, and whether government is showing up in ways that make a difference in everyday life. This is one of the most important ways the council helps our entire DC government stay accountable to residents. As many of us know, often government grows, we raise taxes, and we don't really assess how well we are spending that money. Too often elected officials act like it's their money or don't care whose money it is, and it is the taxpayer money. And when they pay that money, they are doing it for a service that they believe will bring some real good to them. So we try to make sure that we respect what the taxpayers invest in and see it as an investment. So performance oversight is not just about reports or compliance. It's about listening. It's about hearing directly from our neighbors who rely on government services, from families navigating complex systems, and from agency leaders responsible for delivering results. We look at what is working, what is not, and where people are falling through the cracks, not to assign blame, but to make our system work better for our communities. What we hear today helps shape our oversight throughout the year, informs budget decisions, and guides future legislation. Today, we'll hear from all public witnesses who have signed up, regardless of which agency or agencies they want to discuss. Then we'll turn to government representatives. First, we have the Office of the Tenant Advocate, or OTA. We'll hear from the Chief Tenant Advocate, Johanna Shreve, who leads an agency that many residents turn to in moments of real crisis. OTA serves as a voice for the tenant community across all levels of government. When residents are facing eviction, struggling with confusing bills, or forced to leave unsafe housing, OTA is their first call. The agency provides legal advice and representation, educates tenants about their rights, and offers emergency housing assistance when people have nowhere else to turn. OTA also plays an important role in shaping housing policy, making sure tenants have a voice in the rooms where decisions are made. OTA services are central to our mission and our duty to guarantee safe, stable, and affordable housing for all residents. Today, we will evaluate how well OTA is fulfilling those responsibilities, identify areas of improvement, and ensure the agency has the tools and accountability to serve tenants effectively. I also want to acknowledge that this year marks the 20th anniversary of the Office of the Tenant Advocate, which started in 2005 with Chief Tenant Advocate Shreve at the helm. She has put 2 decades of passion and hard work into making OTA what it is today. That is no small feat, and the district is absolutely better for it. After we talk to OTA, we will turn to the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs, or MORCA. For years, I've worked to strengthen DC's reentry framework. When people returning home have the support they need, families are stronger and communities are safer. Under my oversight, and thanks to my budget advocacy, we have expanded MORCA from 2 staff positions to 19 and advanced the Returning Citizens Opportunity to Succeed Act, which requires reentry planning to begin months before release, helps people obtain identification, and provides transportation support for jobs and housing searches. We also eliminated Jim Crow-era voting restrictions and expanded the right to vote through the Restore the Vote Amendment Act, because civic participation strengthens our democracy and our neighborhoods. We funded the MORCA Georgetown Paralegal Program so returning citizens have access to professional career pathways, not just a narrow set of options. And we passed and funded the Access to Jobs Amendment Act to ensure people returning home can access real, paid work, including in the trades. Our work has also recognized that incarceration affects entire families, not just the individuals incarcerated. We passed the Helping Children Impacted by Parental Incarceration Amendment Act to require DC to assess and plan for the needs of children with an incarcerated parent. And through the Criminal Record Accuracy Assurance Act, we stopped criminal history providers from reporting sealed, expunged, or set-aside records tied to cases that did not result in a conviction. because people should not be permanently punished for dismissed charges or old mistakes. When I speak about listening in these hearings, I want to acknowledge that as much work as we've done in the returning citizen community and in the Office of Returning Citizens Affairs, those ideas didn't come from me. They came from the community, the returning citizen community. We just had to listen and act on those recommendations. So as we look ahead, today's hearing is also about the future. Last week, I held a roundtable on the nomination of Director Talib Shakir, where he spoke about grounding in Morca's work in data, clear goals, and measurable outcomes. I look forward to learning more today about his first month at Morca, his vision for the office, and how recent structural changes have affected its ability to serve residents. In addition to Morca, we will also be asking Director Shakir about the Commission on Reentry and Returning Citizens Affairs. The Commission brings together returning citizens, advocates, and DC agencies to advise the mayor, the council, and Morca. While it has faced challenges in recent years, it has resumed meeting, and today I'm eager to hear how the Commission plans to elevate community voices and advance recommendations rooted in lived experiences. Before we start hearing testimony, I want to lay out the ground rules for our public witnesses. Everyone should have received a list of witnesses. Yesterday, I'll call those on our witness list and panels. If you've testified before our committee before, you know that we use the witness list as a guide, but we do our best to get everybody's statement, which means we need to give my team some flexibility to move folks up or down the witness list, as well as to assemble reasonable sized panels for the witnesses, for the witness table here in the room. So please listen closely whenever I'm calling up witnesses, and thank you in advance for your patience and flexibility. When I call your name as part of a witness panel, if you're in the hearing room, please take a seat at the witness table in front of me. If you are on Zoom, joining virtually, staff will promote you from Zoom attendee to panelist so that you can testify. You may need to click the accept promotion button on your screen. When you're promoted, you will drop out of the hearing momentarily and come back in as a panelist, after which time you'll be able to unmute. Public witnesses will have 4 minutes to testify, and advisory neighborhood commissioners testifying in their capacity as commissioners will have 5 minutes. After that, we will hear from our government witnesses who have 10 minutes to testify. Last note is an important one. If you see me looking down or my team looking down during your testimonies, which you will see often, we are not scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. I am most likely taking notes on your testimony, and my team is either doing the same or working to administer the hearing. I just want to make sure people feel respected when they take their time to come testify before this committee. So with that, I will call up our first panel. Do we have multiple panels or just one?
We have two, so 4
Okay.
and then 2 for this.
All right, so we will call up our first panel of public witnesses. Tariq Hardiman with the Council for Court Excellence, Meredith Wilson with the Community Outreach Coordination Reentry for Jubilee Housing Incorporated, Tyrell Holcomb, Vice President of External Affairs with Jubilee Housing Incorporated. That's it. And Zachary Ragone, Policy Director for the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. And Tariq Hardiman, you can begin your testimony. Welcome. Hit the button on the base of your microphone.
Thank you, Chairperson White, for the opportunity to testify at today's performance oversight hearing on the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizen Affairs, or MORCA. My name is Tariq Hardiman, and I am providing this testimony in my capacity as an Open Horizons Civil Justice Fellow for the Council for Court Excellence, also known as CCE. So in 2023, CCE launched the Second Chance Hiring Alliance, which is a coalition of DC employers, workforce development programs, government agencies such as MORCA, and returning citizens committed to expanding second chance hiring. And through this work, we have seen the tools and support returning citizens need to properly reintegrate, and we appreciate MORCA's role in these efforts. Through interviews, case studies, and discussions with government agencies, employees, and returning citizens, our report identifies several ways the district can uplift returning citizens. These methods include securing a dedicated budget for MORCA, increasing transparency around the services and programs MORCA provides, strengthening referral tracking and follow-through, and expanding data collection and reporting to allow for meaningful evaluation of initiatives. I will now describe our key findings and recommendations. So first relates to operating budget stability. MORCA's budget was reduced by more than $1 million when it was subsumed under the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, yet staffing levels remained the same. MORCA stated that programming was not affected, and we respectfully ask for clarification on how such a significant reduction was achieved without service impacts. With roughly 8,000 individuals estimated to return to DC annually from Bureau of Prisons and Department of Corrections facilities, MORCA's budget should be sufficient to meet the scale of need. We urge the council to restore MORCA's funding to prior levels. Second, transparency of services. Information available to the public about MORCA's programs is often limited and vague. More precise descriptions of eligibility requirements and program scope on their website would improve access and coordination efforts. It is still unclear to what extent MORCA partners with community-based organizations. If MORCA serves as a central hub in their reentry ecosystem, we recommend greater disclosures regarding its partnership and referral services. Thirdly, referral tracking and case management. Stakeholders we interviewed consistently raised concerns about referrals lacking sufficient follow-through. Transportation barriers and scarce coordination often prevent returning citizens from accessing referred services. Consequently, we recommend that MORCA track whether referrals result in service uptake and maintain consistent communication with partner organizations to ensure program availability. Fourth, data collection and employment outcomes. MORCA acknowledged gaps in its ability to track the number of individuals returning to DC from federal facilities and cited the absence of a finalized memorandum of understanding with the Bureau of Prisons as the cause. And with that, we recommend that MORCA finalize that agreement or provide additional information on why it has not yet been completed. Without a sufficient data tracking system, gauging MORCA's progress can be troublesome. This is especially concerning when considering the steep drop-off in reported employment outcomes from 77% in fiscal year 2023 to 17.6% in fiscal year 2024. We recommend improved data collection to enhance planning and accountability. Fifth, the Access to Jobs Grant. The reentry community would benefit from clearer reporting on this program. Specifically, we recommend distributing information about the program's outcomes, job retention rates, and future expansion plans. We also recommend extending the application period in coming years. And finally, the Commission on Reentry and Returning Citizens. Greater public information is needed to elucidate the Commission's goals, such as member participation, authority, and progress on its stated priorities. And we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Data and transparency is my love language, by the way.
Yes,
So
sir.
appreciate your testimony. Meredith Wilson, Community Outreach Coordinator for Reentry with Jubilee Housing. Welcome.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairperson White and members of the committee. My name is Meredith Wilson, and I am a Community Outreach Coordinator at Jubilee Housing. I have been with the organization for about 7 months, supporting residents and applicants who are navigating their return home and working to stabilize their lives after incarceration. I want to start by sharing what brought me to this work. During my senior year of college, I took a class inside a state prison. Half of my classmates were incarcerated, and half of them were students from my college. Being in that environment made very real the ways in which our legal system can be disorienting and dehumanizing, especially for people trying to move forward with limited resources and support. Before coming to Jubilee, I worked as a paralegal and spent a great deal of time working with justice-involved individuals, including people who are actively incarcerated. Even basic tasks like getting in touch with someone inside required navigating barriers that most people never encounter. This experience made clear to me that I wanted to work directly in reentry, not just around the system, but alongside people coming home and trying to rebuild their lives. Since joining Jubilee, that commitment has only grown stronger. One moment that stayed with me involved an applicant who came into our office after spending the entire night updating his resume. He shared that the only thing he was missing was a USB drive so he could take it to the library and submit applications. I had one, cleared it, and gave it to him. His reaction was immediate and overwhelming. It felt like a major barrier had been removed. That moment stuck with me because it showed how vulnerable this population can be and how even small forms of support can make a meaningful difference. If something as simple as a USB drive can help someone move forward, then stable housing, coordinated services, and clear access points matter even more. That's where MORCA has been especially important from our perspective. At Jubilee, we regularly direct people to MORCA. New residents who are recently returning home are pointed there early. Applicants often arrive with MORCA folders already in hand, so by the time many people reach us, they've already received guidance, structure, and support through MORCA services. Those folders might seem small, but they often become central places for keeping documents, tracking appointments, and organizing next steps as they get back on their feet. MORCA understands that reentry is not just about referrals, but about helping people navigate a complex system in a manageable way. What stands out most to me is that MORCA serves as a central starting point. Justice-involved individuals are often required to travel across the city to meet basic requirements. MORCA helps reduce that burden by offering coordinated support in one place, and that matters in real, practical ways. From where I sit as the Community Outreach Coordinator, MORCA is a vital part of the reentry ecosystem in the district. The work being done there directly supports housing stability, employment outcomes, and long-term reintegration for returning citizens. Thank you for the opportunity to share this perspective, and thank you to the committee and MORCA staff for the work you continue to do.
Thank you very much. Tyrell Holcomb with Jubilee Housing, Vice President of External Affairs.
Good afternoon, Chairperson White, members of the committee, and staff. My name is Tyrell Holcomb, and I serve as Vice President of External Affairs at Jubilee Housing. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today and to speak to the role the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs plays in advancing reentry housing and services in the district. At this stage of the district's reentry work, the question is no longer whether housing matters. We know it does. The question before us in FY26 and beyond is whether our systems are structured to deliver reentry housing at a scale and in a way that leads to long-term stability. At Jubilee Housing, we view housing as a public safety issue. Stable housing paired with supportive services remains one of the strongest predictors of successful reentry. Having watched my stepfather successfully return home after incarceration, he is now supporting his brother navigate being home after 20 years. But it has not been easy when it comes to housing. When housing is unavailable or unstable, the outcomes are predictable: homelessness, unemployment, and an increased likelihood of recidivism. MORCA's work in housing navigation, service coordination, and workforce connection is essential to interrupting that cycle. Over the past year, our partnership with MORCA has continued to strengthen. The agency has played an important role in supporting justice-involved residents as they navigate reentry, helping individuals access housing and services while coordinating across systems that are often difficult to navigate. At the same time, the need continues to far exceed the available supply of deeply affordable housing for returning citizens. Jubilee Housing is actively contributing to solutions through projects such as King Emmanuel Baptist Church and Ontario Place. We are advancing 70 deeply affordable housing units, including dedicated housing and workforce training opportunities for returning citizens. These projects demonstrate what is possible when public investments is paired with experienced housing providers. However, individual projects alone will not meet the scale of the need facing the district. We also want to acknowledge the leadership of former MORCA Director Carey, whose stewardship helped strengthen the foundation of the agency and elevate the importance of reentry housing and services across the district. That leadership has positioned MORCA well for its next phase of work. As we look ahead, Jubilee is encouraged by the opportunity to work alongside Director Shakir as MORCA enters this next chapter. We are optimistic about the direction of the agency and the potential to deepen coordination, sharpen strategy, and advance long-term solutions for returning citizens. Advancing a long-term housing plan that establishes stable, permanent pathways for returning citizens is essential if we are serious about reducing recidivism and supporting lasting stability. Temporary placements alone will not meet the need. We believe MORCA has an important role to play in helping align partners, systems, and strategy to support that shift toward permanence and scale. Jubilee Housing remains committed to partnering in this work and to supporting solutions that are durable, coordinated, and responsive to the realities returning citizens face. Thank you for your time and continued leadership on this issue. I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. And Zachary Ragone, Policy Director with the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. Welcome.
Chairman White, committee staff, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Zachary Rigoni, and I'm the Policy Director for the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. We've submitted detailed written testimony, but I want to focus on 3 core concerns this morning. First, we want to acknowledge something important. MORCA's absorption into the Executive Office of the Mayor has not yet resulted in mission dilution. In year 1, leadership's commitment appears to have held, which was expected immediately following that shift. The real test comes in years 2, 3, and beyond, when competing priorities mount, when budget pressure intensifies, and when political attention shifts. MORCA no longer has a protected budget line. Its staff can be more easily reassigned. And over time, even with the best of intentions, reentry can lose ground to other demands. That structural vulnerability is why the loss of independence doesn't reduce the need for council oversight, it increases it. And that need is made more urgent by the current state of the Commission on Reentry and Returning Citizens Affairs. Under the law, the Commission is supposed to provide oversight through regular meetings and public reporting. But based on publicly available information, there's little evidence of consistent activity or recent guidance. Structurally, the Commission is not functioning as the accountability mechanism the law envisions. Second, at the same time institutional oversight has weakened, the district has been increasing monitoring and compliance requirements of community-based partner organizations. Across multiple funding streams, partners are asked to provide more detailed documentation, more frequent reporting, and greater verification of activities and outcomes, often as conditions of continued funding. And to be clear, accountability does matter. Oversight is important and reasonable. But here's the problem. The district is increasing expectations downward onto its partners while allowing accountability upward within the government itself to atrophy. If oversight is essential to program integrity, it has to be applied consistently across all levels of the system, including within MORCA and the Executive Office. The absence of effective internal oversight undermines confidence in reporting demands being placed on community organizations that are already stretched thin delivering services. Third, given MORCA's current position within the executive branch, we believe its most effective role is as a funding administrator and facilitator, not necessarily as a direct service provider. Programs like Access to Jobs demonstrate what works. MORCA administers the funding, while services are delivered by organizations with established community relationships and on-the-ground expertise. This model insulates reentry work from political cycles and allows MORCA to focus on coordinating, convening, and system-level support. Expanding MORCA's internal service delivery footprint, by contrast, ties reentry capacity more tightly to executive branch priorities, especially now that MORCA's budget and staff are no longer fenced in. And these concerns become more urgent when you look at the data. The DC jail population has increased 64% since January of 2023. Last August, the CDF hit its highest population since 2017. More people cycling through incarcerations means more people needing reentry support when they come home. We've submitted 4 questions in our written testimony, but let me highlight 2. First, how does the council assess the current functionality of the Commission on Reentry? And do you view it as a viable oversight mechanism for MORCA right now? Because if it's not functioning, and the available evidence suggests it's not, then this committee's oversight role becomes essential. Second, how does the council evaluate the balance between resources going to MORCA's internal operations versus resources deployed through community-based organizations? That balance matters for long-term resilience. We do not oppose MORCA, and we do not question the good faith of its leadership. It is a valuable agency. Our concerns are structural, not personal. Strong, consistent accountability and partner-focused support benefits everyone in the system and ensures reentry remains a priority beyond this year and the next budget cycle. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much to this panel. Good timing. Oversight, accountability, resources, data collection, which goes to oversight and accountability. So a couple things I want to get perspectives on and then first share some and get feedback. We worked over years, especially my first term on the council, to grow the agency. And most of my proposals to grow the agency were opposed by the administration. And so we had to really work to grow this agency. Now, it is important that the agency operate, because when the council starts saying, well, why are we continuing to increase funding to an agency? I want to make sure we have a clear answer. Same for the other agencies, which is why I now require all of our agencies to have key goals, right? So left to their own devices, what all the agencies will say is, we already have KPIs. But if you look at their KPIs, they have like 25, 50 of them things, right? And then they change every year. If you got 25 priorities, you have 0 priorities. If you change the priorities every year, you can't track it and there's no accountability. So there's a method to this madness, right? I want to make sure we're doing the work. I want to make sure we can justify and respond to anybody who says we shouldn't be investing so much in this. But when you increase budget, it does come with accountability. Something I want to clarify is oversight only carries things so far, right? You can't run an agency through oversight because the government we still barely live in a democracy, but the democratic governments weren't made for legislative bodies to run agencies. We don't have that level of authority. So you can insist on things, you can push things, you can fund things, and sometimes you fund things and they take the money and do something else with it. So the FY25 budget, we funded, I believe, 2.9 million. The best I can tell is only 1.9 million went to the agency. The rest went to the executive office of the mayor. What the hell happened to the money? We need it. So I'm confused and hope to get some clarification from the agency, but it's really hard for me to get more money in a budget if the money gets stolen. Council is not going to support that, and frankly, I can't support it. I can't send taxpayer money into a black hole. So we've got to figure that out. Tariq Hardiman. So one of the things I appreciated your testimony top to bottom. One of the things I think is important for us to focus on is referral tracking. So the agency has, and it's my characterization, not the agency's, over the past years really pushed back on us and said, Chairman, we really are more of a referral agency than a service provider agency. That may be fair. But if you don't track the referrals and what happens to the referrals, then it gets difficult, impossible to measure success. Like, are your referral efforts working? If we are hearing from some service providers that there's an initial contact and then lack of follow through, then we need to get our hands around that. Are there any examples that you have or have been given, Mr. Hardiman, for places where there wasn't follow through?
Yes, thank you. I do not have any examples on me at the moment, but I can follow through in writing in the future.
That'd be helpful. I appreciate it. Do you, any of you all, aware of any organization or program that does good referral tracking? Because it can be difficult, right? Like, you connect somebody with an entity, let's say it's job training, and you say, you make the connection, they sign up, you say, go forth and conquer. How do you know what happened at the end of the program? Do you all know any programs that have good referral tracking that we might look to as a model?
So I don't particularly have a great answer for that as it relates to DC government agencies and referrals that have been doing it well, in large part because our primary interaction is with MORCA as far as referrals go. I do know in terms of individual organizations, the community-based organizations tracking the referrals that they get. I believe many of them do that in terms of seeing how many get referred from, say, their probation officer, from MORCA, from a friend, things along that line. I do think what a lot of community-based organizations try to do, but maybe don't do as well, is that continual follow-up to see did a person that came for, say, housing that also didn't have medical care at the time, did they ever end up getting that medical care? Because it's not necessarily in that organization's lane to follow up on it. They might want to, they might desire to, but they have so many other things that are pressing that are their primary duties. And I think that's where potentially MORCA can fill in that gap in a specialized space that a lot of others don't, is more of that tracker of that outcome for that individual, whereas the community-based organizations are providing the frontline support, having a organization that's primarily focused on, okay, is that support doing what it's needing, and how is that person transitioning through it? Did the person who got housing also get medical if they needed it? If they got the medical, do they now have a job that they needed it? If they got the job, have they gone through any type of educational or betterment program that they've done? If they've got that, have they strengthened their community ties? Because as that central unit that has the connections to all those different CBOs, Morca is well positioned for that, more so than an individual organization might be on the outside.
I appreciate that.
Councilmember, could I also add to that? So our Director of Reentry Services is going to be submitting testimony for the record. She was unable to be here today, and I'm pretty sure that she's going to allude to some of our results that our annual report for the reentry department at Jubilee is going to show out and share. And so we have case managers who work with residents as they're reintegrating and making sure that they're, doing some of those things in terms of getting those services that are needed and required from a health perspective or any other dynamics programming wise. And so internally, we use a system called Apricot, which is where we are tracking all of those dynamics from that initial onboarding process from a case management perspective and following them all the way through. And obviously, from a transitional housing perspective, there's a dynamic where once they've transitioned elsewhere, we're not keeping up with them to the level that we may have been when they were receiving case management. And so, certainly ditto on the point of how can we ensure that Morca is equipped with those skill sets or those tools rather that would allow them to do that.
Yeah. And, there may be a reality in which there's only so far out you can track it. But we should see how we can track it, because we've got to know if our efforts are working, that people that we're here to serve deserve that. Now, let me talk about the housing piece for a minute. Housing is these days, probably for years now, the most consistent issue I hear from returning citizens and advocates for that community. I started funding shortly after I got to the council housing vouchers specifically for returning citizens. There's only so many of those I can get funded, nowhere near what the need is. And so credit to Morca for getting to a place where they were getting all of those vouchers out the door. But now we have to understand if housing is the most consistent issue we're hearing about from this community, and the number of vouchers that we can fund from the council is limited, then we have to find other paths to it. And I think you've got to measure it. Like, how many people are you connecting with housing? Outside of direct housing vouchers, what are some of you mentioned a Jubilee project. Can you talk about that? And if there are other housing opportunities that you see in your work for returning citizens?
Absolutely. So I shared about the KEB project that we're building currently, which is going to be 18 single room occupancy units that'll be available as residents return home. And so the thought process is that is more transitional. There's a building that we are cutting the ribbon on soon, or maybe we cut the ribbon already. No, we haven't cut the ribbon yet. The ribbon cutting is coming up. There's 26 units that are dedicated out of the 52 units for folks who had previously been incarcerated or someone in the household who was previously incarcerated. And it could have been a year ago or 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It doesn't matter what that dynamic looks like. It's a direct set aside in terms of housing that's available. I think that there are a number of other organizations who are doing similar work. Recovery Cafe over in Ward 8 is in the midst of building a project that I believe is going to have some designated housing for returning citizens. When I think about the long-term housing dynamic, I'm speaking toward not just that transitional opportunity and not just even the affordable housing dynamic, because if we're talking about successful reintegration, one of the issues that my stepfather's running into now is that he doesn't make the amount of money that he once made when he first came home. And so he doesn't qualify for certain programming that he would have as well. And so what does it look like as we're, as the excuse me, inclusionary zoning units that are available in projects, and even thinking about ADUs on projects that are built. And so from a long-term stability dynamic, thinking about what it looks like as we're building projects that go beyond the scope of Ward 7, Ward 8, which is where we know we build a lot of our affordable housing over the last decade or so. What does that look like in Ward 5, in Ward 6, and in Ward 3, and other places where we've built housing that allows that opportunity for residents to be housing secure. And then I think in terms of a place where we've seen success as it relates to housing stability, there's an organization in New York. We took a trip a little over a year ago, Fortune Society. I mean, there's a dynamic in terms of partnership they have with the city of New York, but then there's also the dynamic of how they're building housing that's integrating, similar to what we're doing with the 52 unit building over in Colorado.
I appreciate it. I hope you will share some information about that New York model with us so we can look at it. For the project that's coming online soon, I've been looking forward to that. I'm excited about it for returning citizens. Do you happen to know if that project got live tech funding? If you don't know, it's all right.
I don't know offhand. I can check into it and get back to you. I do know also that there's another project that's in the pipeline for us that would deliver the exact same. It would be our first mixed use, more type of property where we'd have some retail space at the bottom. The 1800, also known as Adams Morgan Plaza, is where we want to do a similar dynamic where there's a set aside of returning reentry housing mixed in with other folks who would be their neighbors.
Okay, I appreciate it. Since we're talking about housing, I'm going to talk about this later, so I might as well bring it up now. Anybody seen a halfway house in DC? Please raise your hand in this room if you've seen a halfway house in DC. I have not seen a halfway house. The last time I went to visit it, the site was October or November? October, and I was told this time it's going to be done by the end of December. So I asked somebody to drive by yesterday and let me know if it's done. And let's see, there it is. Let's this thing work? I'm trying to, okay. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Somebody's got to keep pointing this out. All right. I'm looking at this photo and I don't see a halfway house. And it is January. Again, I was told by the CEO that it was going to be done face to face. I had to go in person because they keep saying it's going to be done. Then a month passes, a year passes, it's not done. Like, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And somebody in government has got to say it. I think it should be more than one person. So I'm hoping other people in government will say this is not acceptable. Because brothers and sisters are coming back from incarceration after being away from the city for a long time. How are you going to find a job in DC if you're in Baltimore? How are you reconnecting with your family if you're in Baltimore, right? So we're doing a disservice, and I'm very uncomfortable with the silence across this government. And if I'm the only one saying it, I'll be the only one saying it, but I hope others are going to join the chorus. So we'll stay on it. And Core DC, if you're listening, if you need help, let me know, like how I can help. But this is unacceptable. I want to thank this panel for being with us. This is an agency I love, and so we gotta push the agencies. That's how we get better, is by saying, all right, this thing is working, this thing isn't. Let's work together to fix it. And so we are lucky in DC between the returning citizen community and then the advocates. We just have some really good dedicated people at the helm. So we've got to continue to be an example for the nation, but that means we got to push ourselves. So thank you very much for being with us. We will now turn to our
He's didn't sign up.
second panel, and I think this will be our final panel. It may be a mix if we have. Do we have people online?
Yes.
Okay. How many? Oh, okay. So we have Dr. Robert Jordan. Is Dr. Robert Jordan? There we are. And is there anybody else here in person who came to testify? All right. So let's welcome some. Yeah. We will. Andrea Adams, Jordan Gouchinar, Senior Green Infrastructure Projects Manager with Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. Pamela Bailey, Managing Director of More Than Our Crimes. Carlos Carolina, Community Organizer. Rebecca Berry, and Jasmine McCoy. Wait,
Is that all you want to do?
um,
I don't know how to say that person's.
okay. For the next witness, I apologize. The name is Abdirahmana, Ramana, and John Slattery.
Start with Andre. Oh, start with them, sorry.
All right. Dr. Robert Jordan, welcome. Thanks for being with us. If you hit the button on the base of the microphone. Yeah, no, hit it and it'll turn red when you press it. Press the button. Thank you.
All right, let's go. Let me back up a little bit now. So I wanted to thank everybody for their previous comments and insight. It was very informational. Also wanted to quickly address the databases and systems that you were talking about, track people in the city. You know, most of these systems are already existing and they're under DC government control. You have DCAS, DC Networks, Catch and Snap databases under different agencies. DCAS, DC, and Catch, Snap, DHS are controlling those. Those are tracking already people that are receiving housing funding, SNAP funding, and then also your TANF services. Then DC Networks is tracking your education, occupational training programs. These systems aren't currently talking to each other, but it wouldn't be a significant level effort to have a view of the data per resident. It's just a matter of doing it, and also you would want to make that somewhat accessible to the provider so they could see the braiding of services across the district. I wanted to do a quick intro so I can kind of validate why I'm here on behalf of Morca. I have a background as an ANC Commissioner, Ward 7, 7B06, Fairfax Village, 2 terms back in 2009 to 2012. And from there, created constituent services worldwide to continue those services that we were doing, mostly pro bono work for Marion Barry, some youth employment programs, financial literacy, and computer literacy. Fast forward, we are providing a wide variety of education occupational services. We're also an employer for the majority of the things that we teach across the district. We've been the leader in WIOA, ITAs, which are individual training accounts, the past 3 consecutive years for DOES. We work with DYRS, DOES, DSI, MORCA, you name it, even some of the people I see on the panel up here with Alliance for Chesapeake Bay doing returning citizen programs for Department of Energy and Environment and housing, not even housing, but just employing them at our location in Capitol Hill, right at the corner of 2nd and D Street across from Union Station. So every day we are teaching people everything from special police officer, culinary, cosmetology, background checking, drug testing, occupational trades, IT, and green infrastructure certifications, and then having them perform that work on site for the general public, literally mixing the ankle bracelet and the tennis bracelet community in Capitol Hill every day. So I'm an employer, I'm the education provider, I'm the social services worker, all under one roof, all born and, created, founded right here in the district, Ward 7. And what I'm trying to say in my last minute is this funding Morca services is the only actual taxpayer benefit you can have. These, right now the economic environment is bad for the labor market. I have former GS-15 people that were directors over at USAID bartending for me. Former people that have UVA degrees and master's degrees, now personal trainers at LA Fitness. And the market for the returning citizens makes sense if it's subsidized because employers do not have an economic reason to go outside in an oversaturated labor pool of very qualified people. You have to provide an economic benefit for the employers to reach out and give those chances. Also, when you do put them on the payroll, they have an opportunity to pay back taxes and everything versus staying on the social benefits, which are just going to cost more taxpayer money.
You have an additional few seconds if you have a little more you want to
So
say.
I was kind of getting to the real meat and potatoes is the alternative of not funding Morca would increase the amount of taxpayer burden. Because once you're able to employ this population, then you actually bring them back into the local economy and remove them from being government benefit recipients back to being contributors to the local economy and tax base. So it behooves taxpayers to keep programs like this going. And I'm a recipient of the Morca Job Access Grant currently for the past 2.5 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andrea Adams, who is with us virtually.
Good afternoon, Chairman White. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Chairman White, members of the committee, my name is Dr. Andrea Adams, and I served as principal investigator for the Memorandum of Understanding between the University of the District of Columbia and the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizen Affairs. I am pleased to present the final findings of the needs assessment and strategic plan for children of incarcerated parents, completed in December 2024 and then updated in 2025. Working with former Director Lamont Carey and his staff, we synthesized literature with data from focus groups, listening sessions, stakeholder meetings, and then conducted validation interviews with 37 incarcerated parents to support our findings. Our research reveals that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to this issue. The impacts of incarceration, ranging from emotional distress to financial instability, begin at arrest and persist through reentry. A critical finding is the pivotal role played by the designated parent, who is the guardian that assumes responsibility for the child. Our analysis suggests that supporting this caregiver's capacity to provide housing and financial stability acts as a moderating factor that significantly reduces the social vulnerability of the child. Furthermore, because the district does not currently track these children as a specific subpopulation, estimates of impacted youth vary widely because of repeated cycles of arrest and incarceration. At any given time, estimates of impact range from several hundred into the thousands. An evaluation of district services noted that service locations were adequately represented in Wards 7 and 8, where the majority of children reside. Wards 7 and 8 are also locations with the highest arrest and incarceration rates during the time period studied, creating an overexposure for children in those wards. The report outlines a strategic plan built on the actions of defining the subpopulation of impacted children, empowering Morca to coordinate strategy, legally authorizing designated parents or caregivers to support impacted children, and creating an ecosystem of support that includes district agencies and current and future DC organizations. First, the district must legally define a child of an incarcerated parent. The proposed definition would be those aged 0 to 21 impacted at any stage of the criminal justice process. Second, data collection protocols at the point of the incarcerated parent's detention must be established to identify these children as soon as they are exposed. Third, giving a designated parent or guardian authority to access district resources on the child's behalf ensures that the support follows the child regardless of the caregiver's personal financial status or where the child ultimately resides. This plan contemplates that some children may not need financial resources and allows them to access the specific resource that they need. Further, to address emotional vulnerability at all stages, the plan calls for establishing access to trauma-informed counseling services across the entire ecosystem. A comprehensive communication guide should also be created alongside a smartphone app to allow families to connect with nonprofit resources, those supported by the district and other independent organizations. An annual summit should also be held so that agencies and organizations and the reentry population can share best practices and refine the district strategy. Lastly, implementation of legislative reforms that support modification or expansion of existing benefits, such as the standby guardianship or the grandparent caregiver program, and other initiatives included in the report, will ensure that designated parents can support these children and that the district's children are not invisible victims of the criminal justice system. On behalf of UDC and MORCA, we stand ready to assist in moving this strategic plan forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jordan Gouchnar, Senior Green Infrastructure Projects Manager with Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Jordan Gokenauer, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay. I'm here today because the complete elimination of funding for the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Maintenance Program, known as GSI Maintenance, has dismantled an effective workforce pathway for returning citizens. It is not an environmental issue. It is a re-entry, workforce, and public health issue, and it deserves MORCA's attention and leadership. The GSI maintenance program provided stable, year-round jobs for DC residents with a strong focus on hiring returning citizens. Through this program, 89 returning citizens gained paid employment, hands-on training, and marketable skills while maintaining green infrastructure in their own neighborhoods. These were not temporary or transitional jobs. This work allowed people returning from incarceration to build consistent employment histories, earn income, and visibly contribute to community well-being. When funding was eliminated, the opportunity collapsed. As a result, 30 job positions dedicated to green infrastructure maintenance were lost. Contractors can no longer sustain crews built specifically to employ returning citizens. 4 years of trust, training, and workforce development were undone, and DC will no longer meet its MS4 permit requirements. The city's green infrastructure is now deteriorating. Without routine maintenance, rain gardens and other GSI assets clog, flood, and fail. These systems shift from community assets to community liabilities, especially in neighborhoods already facing flooding, heat, and environmental health risks. This also creates higher costs for the district. Restoring neglected GSI assets can cost 3 to 4 times more than routine maintenance. By not providing the needed maintenance, the district will fail to meet its MS4 permit requirements, thus resulting in penalties and additional fines. We are paying more in the long run while losing jobs in the short term. I want to be clear, although this funding historically flowed through an environmental agency, the impact of its loss cuts directly across MORCA's mission. The GSI maintenance program delivered stable employment and marketable workforce training for returning citizens while helping to meet the district's MS4 requirements. This is not an environmental silo, it's a re-entry and economic issue. This is exactly the kind of cross-sector solution the district needs. We are asking MORCA to help elevate this issue. Specifically, we urge you to recognize the benefit of environmental workforce pathways for returning citizens, to include support for restoring required GSI maintenance funding in your priority letter to the mayor's office, and to encourage cross-agency collaboration so workforce programs are protected and sustained. The district already knows this model works. With restored investment and coordinated leadership, GSI maintenance can once again provide real jobs, healthier neighborhoods, and lasting opportunities for returning citizens. Thank you for your time and your commitment to cross-sector re-entry success in DC.
Thank you very much. Pamela Bailey, Managing Director of More Than Our Crimes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I've been here before, so I don't need to give an introduction to More Than Our Crimes. And actually, I want to say that I really in wholehearted agreement with some of the points already made, which is the need for more accountability and measurement of the actual impact of MORCA. I'm just going to add to that, actually. I figure my comments are more additive at this point. And I want to make the point that I think there's another role that MORCA could be serving, other than I agree that it shouldn't be doing direct service, but it should be doing more than just providing referrals. And that's what I'm going to address today. While MORCA, on its webpage, MORCA states that it serves as the district's coordinating and advisory agency for reentry. That's what it says its mission is. However, while MORCA is likely the reentry organization most visited by district residents returning from prison, and many report receiving useful assistance from the agency, our observations and interviews indicate it neither acts as a true coordinator nor provides holistic case management for everyone. And the point I'll make here that although MORCA does provide mainly referrals rather than direct services, a really valuable role it could be serving is that of coordinator. Despite the claim on its website, return citizens still feel the need to dash to every other agency or nonprofit they hear about, and a significant amount of their time is wasted running from place to place, trying to find information that should be curated for them. Each agency and nonprofit in the reentry services ecosystem, including MORCA, continues to operate independently without coordination. For example, while we have counted about 5 organizations offering often overlapping job readiness services and programs, we know you are already well aware that immediate transitional housing is ideally, especially for longer than 3 months, is in short supply, especially for those who do not have mental health or substance abuse disorders. There's a little bit more for them. And I just want to stop here and observe, since you talked about vouchers earlier, yes, they're getting out the door, but there's a total lack of transparency about the criteria used to determine who gets them. There's actually a pretty widespread perception that it's favoritism. Likewise, no one appears to consistently offer free laptops or emergency cash assistance for safer security deposits. Wouldn't it be great if MORCA truly acted as the coordinating agency it says it is and brought everyone together to identify and fill the gaps? That brings me to a few larger points. No one is asking a broad representative sample of recently returned citizens themselves how well their needs are being met by MORCA and the various other agencies and nonprofits. They should, by the way, include those with sex-related offenses and those who are 65 or older, populations who are not currently well served. An overarching strategy to meet these needs does not exist, which could then be used to guide funding allocations by the Council and OVSJG. This annually updated strategy should be used as a guide to truly coordinated case management for returning citizens, starting when they're still in prison or at the halfway house. My second topic today I want to just mention briefly is the Commission on Reentry and Returning Citizen Affairs. I confess that I wasn't familiar with the commission until I was reading the proposed Project Homecoming Amendment Act, which we support. If the act was passed, the commission would be charged with overseeing its implementation by MORCA. Yet when we tried to learn more about the commission, we could find almost nothing. Even the members of the commission are very difficult to find online. When we used ChatGPT, it came up with only a partial dated list. We wonder why the members and a record of what work they're doing and have done are not public. It also appears that many seats are unfilled, and it's unclear if the commission has any experience providing oversight for such a program that is complex and in the housing arena. So we would not support giving such a responsibility to the commission until the public gets a chance to weigh in. And even without the act, returning citizens deserve to know more about just what the commission is doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. Abdurrahmana. You'll have to unmute. Abderrahmana, if you are able to unmute, would love to receive your testimony.
Oh, there was OTA apparently. Never mind.
Ah, there we go. Okay, you're with an agency. Oh, okay. Well, let me thank this panel for being with us. Andrea Adams was excited to receive the report on children of incarcerated parents. Some great recommendations in there. How do we? What would you say are our next steps on this? How do we operationalize this? Lots of good recommendations that I think are largely on point. How do we start operationalizing this so it's not just a report that we did and it goes on a shelf?
I think one of the first thing that needs to happen is for us to figure out where we need to identify these children that are in the district. And one of the suggestions was made that we go to one of the other, maybe to CSOSA or one of the other agencies that are dealing with incarcerated, the parents themselves, ask them some questions at the point of detention, start to get an idea of how many children are involved. Like I said, a child experiences an issue even when their parent is arrested. And if we were to do some sort of look in terms of the data, maybe for 6 months to see on average how many children that is, then you could start out by saying, okay, next step is what agencies provide support for these children. I know when we did the stakeholder sessions, we had individuals who were providing support to the incarcerated parent, but also were providing support to children who were identified. And so I think the first thing, and you said data is your love language. The first thing is to get some understanding of who these children are. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, I met folks who were in their 40s whose parents had been incarcerated, who are still having emotional issues around that. And so the other part of that is there are lots of agencies in DC that provide mental health support. And so connecting these children into existing services might be another way to do that. But it requires I would say a group of individuals who are going to say, okay, let's look at this report and let's start implementing some of these things, starting out with determining what is the number of children or the scope of the children. And you could do that with a pilot study that would be 6 months, so that then you could extrapolate forward to determine what that looks like, so that you would know, if you were going to ask, for example, foster care does a lot of counseling for individuals who, the 15% of those who who are there because one of their parents was incarcerated. If they're already providing that type of counseling, then bringing other folks to them and saying, hey, here's another population of folks you can provide counseling for, might be something that they could do without really, spending a lot of money, which is, in my mind, I'm trying to think of things to do that the district is already providing support through.
Okay. I appreciate that. I think we should collectively, obviously, along with the agency and hopefully following the MORCA, figure out how to shepherd these recommendations forward. Is the agency going to take responsibility to say, hey, we'll move these pieces forward? Is it a working group that says, hey, we're going to make sure these things don't fall through the cracks? Is it the committee, which would be the last resort, but we could do it? I think it's important that we come together and figure out what's the best way to make sure these things move forward. Did you have a?
I just wanted to say one other thing is that I have not yet met Director Shakir yet. And so one of the things that I will do is to make sure that he has another copy of the report And to the extent that we at UDC can do anything to help, we're absolutely willing to move forward and do this work. I have been working on this for 2.5 years.
Yes.
And so I'm excited to continue to try to move it forward.
Yes, indeed.
Patrina Jones at the Ombudsperson for Children already has a project that we were working on with the MPD data and the identified youth. So there's already those data sets and a similar initiative identifying the parents of the identified youth would be the kind of like the next layer you're talking about. But Patrina Jones, a Ombudsperson for Children, is already has the MPD data and the children data.
Okay, I appreciate that. And Dr. Jordan, what is the name of your business or organization again? I'm sorry.
CSW, Constituent Services Worldwide,
Okay.
and the school is Certification School Worldwide.
And did you say you utilize the Access to Jobs program?
Yes.
Okay. On, you mentioned the subsidy, and then Jordan Gochenor mentioned something as well. Jordan, where was the GSI program funded? What agency funded that?
Was that for me? That was through DOE.
Okay. And were these jobs subsidized indefinitely, or was the training subsidized?
We hired contractors who prioritize hiring returning citizens. So we treated it as a contract, and the returning citizens were paid as employees of those contractors. We worked with Clean Decisions, their nonprofit who works exclusively with returning citizens, as well as Ancient Green, Rock Creek Conservancy, and TCG Property Care.
Okay. I mean, jobs are almost never going to be subsidized permanently. So I usually try to focus on using subsidies to get folks in the door, because what we find with the returning citizen community is they usually do very well once they're in the door. But I think it was Dr. Jordan who made this point in the testimony, we have to incentivize employers to hire returning citizens often.
So Ancient Green is a returning citizen company that's now turning around and hiring people from the program. We trained a lot of those people in the Green Infrastructure Certification Program as well, that we do in partnership with UDC.
Okay. And for Jordan, you mentioned, I think you said the MSI 4 requirements. Is that the right?
MS4.
MS4. Okay. So how does lack of funding for this program result in DC not meeting its requirements?
DC is required to maintain the green infrastructure they have installed to meet those requirements. There is no funding for maintenance anymore. This program was a small part of that funding. We were maintaining a little over 400 practices in DC. I don't know the total number that there exist. So without funding for any sort of maintenance, the DC has fallen out of compliance with that.
Okay. And did you mention in your testimony you have data on the number of the employees that were returning citizens in this program?
89 over the course of 4 years.
89.
And that was about 78% of our the total number of crew members who worked with those 4 contractors.
And about how many were there when the funding was cut? So about how many people lost jobs?
I don't have the numbers on if they lost their job or were reassigned to other work, but I know that it was 30 different job positions that were no longer available. I don't know if those companies were able to retain them through other channels or not.
Okay. And Pam Bailey, I appreciate your testimony. Additive to earlier testimonies, the data and accountability are important. I think hopefully the agency is hearing a theme here. It's a place that we just have to tighten up, but we have new leadership at the agency. We also obviously have to tighten up the commission, but more on that later. What are for Pam Bailey, if there was one thing we could change overnight, like we had a magic wand, one thing we could change overnight with respect to Morca, what's the one thing that you think would have the biggest impact?
I would say more of a focus. They can't be. I mean, it's almost like they've been trying to do direct service, and they can't. So they all they do is they focus on somebody who comes in the door, helping them. But they aren't doing what they say they're supposed to do, is coordinating. And they aren't like one thing I think is obviously missing for those people who do meet with them in our help. There isn't really any follow up. Everybody I know who's worked with them ends up having to go back and bug. Nobody, this case manager they supposedly have doesn't follow up, you know. So it's sort of like a one-time in, you get some referrals and then that's it. So I think they have to, I would convert them from any direct service to, I personally would make them a coordinator. And I would have them focus on what everybody's offering and getting them together and having a strategic plan for what reentry returning citizens need. Instead, nobody's asking returning citizens. I think you'd find out a lot in terms of what the gaps are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I appreciate it. One of the problems we had when the agency was very small when I got to the council was one of the biggest complaints, and I heard it all the time, was you go to Morca and they give you a piece of paper that says, here are all the resources.
Yeah, exactly.
Go get them.
Yeah, and then they all run around like little I mean it's crazy to watch them. They literally run all over the place. And my concern, but all these services in a way is the way they're counting impact is the number of bodies who walk in.
Yeah.
Number of bodies who participate in the program, but no one's looking at impact.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a conversation we've had with respect to this agency more citywide. Often we measure success by how much money we've spent on a program. Those aren't the ways to measure impact. Those are the ways to waste time and money. We all are here because we want to have impact. So, excellent. Well, thank you very much to this panel. Yes, you get your what? Yes, please, Dr. Jordan.
No, there's no reason to hold back. You mentioned that oversight can't really police everything that's at the program level. And then you talked about transparency. The straightforward answer and what people are kind of saying is if you had transparency where the providers of these services who are issued the contracts to execute could see when someone talked to a case manager at any of these social services agencies, you would now have a police force because the contractors have an economic incentive. They have SLAs in their contracts. They're trying to follow up on their people. When we send them down somewhere to get government eligibility to qualify for a program, we have a vested interest in making sure they come back with the right paperwork. But the fact that we can't see who they talk to at the government level, that means we can't follow up on it. But enabling us to follow up on it, we take care of the oversight ourselves because we want them in our classrooms. I started out in 2018 as the newest provider of these services. I'm now the oldest provider because everyone else has gone out of business. So it's time to, that piece is critical because we get paid per student, per participant, per outcome. So we'll take care of that piece for you.
Okay. Are you aware of any similar programs in DC, could be with different communities or outside of DC, where that type of data transparency exists, something we could look to as a model?
You would just need to provide a training on, PII, cybersecurity best practices, and then have a sanitized list of we need to set up something where we could at least see, it doesn't have to be a lot of information, but if I send somebody down to an office, can we see which case manager they interacted with?
No, I understand.
Yeah, I don't know if it already exists.
Okay.
But that's kind of the missing piece. And then you would, if you got that piece, you would now empower hundreds of people who are already been awarded contracts and grants across the city.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I do think there's some way to do this. Just need to figure out. And usually for me, the best thing to do is to look for a model that's already working that we can replicate. But we'll figure it out piece by piece. So thank you very much. Dr. Adams, did you have your hand up? Did you?
Yeah, I just was going to chime in and maybe just give my own personal perspective. I sat at MORCA many times talking to returning citizens, and I realized that though MORCA is doing a lot of work in terms of referring, they are doing a lot of mental health counseling right there. And that is such an important part of this whole returning citizens ecosystem, is to have someone to talk to. And I sat and talked with returning citizens in terms of the validation work that I did. And many of them, though frustrated because of one thing or another, were happy to be there to get the services that MORCA was providing. So I just couldn't sit here and not say, through my own personal experience, I understand the heavy lift that it requires at an agency like MORCA, not just to refer, but to get people to the point where emotionally they were able to accept whatever the referral and whatever help that was there.
So I'm glad Jakayla on my team saw your hand up, and I did miss you because you actually bring us to a really important point. And I think it comes to the crux of the frustration between me and MORCA over the past few years about data. I think folks who work in MORCA are like, yo, we're working really hard, and I think that's true. And to your point, unless you're in there every day, you're not seeing the heaviness of a lot of things that folks come in with. And for me, that doesn't say ignore the data because we have more important things to do. It underscores why we track the data. So let's say we're tracking data on referrals and housing and job placement, and the numbers are low. As we dig into those low numbers and say, why are the numbers so low? And the response is because when people come in, they come in and they are having, they have mental health needs that we need to address. Then we get in a problem solving mode and we say, okay, there's clearly something needed in the MORCA office that's not there, that has more to do with mental health than job placement. So that becomes the next place that the agency has to grow. And the incoming director has spoken about mental health. So, there is a method to the madness. But something that the acting director said is clicking in a different way. Hearing it also from you, Dr. Adams, I think the information is pointing us to some additional need in MORCA that is not in the lane, at least that I've been thinking historically. So I hope we can work collectively to explore what that might look like, because I think it would help a lot of folks in MORCA. To my knowledge, people there are not trained to deal with mental health challenges. And just to be transparent, I got a theory that there are two types of people who have mental health challenges who know it, and people who have mental health challenges who don't know it. So I don't say it in a derogatory way, like we all have them. But not every agency is equipped at the moment to manage that. So let me give kudos to the MORCA staff for dealing with that. And Dr. Adams, thank you for that very insightful comment. All right, we're going to move to our last panel of witnesses before our government witnesses testifying, and this is our ANC panel. And we are joined by Commissioner Trupti Patel, 2A03. Yeah, Commissioner, you can begin your testimony. Nice to see you in person.
Thank you, Chairperson White. As you can see by what I'm wearing, I have to go straight to work after this
You're
testimony.
usually at work when you testify, so glad to have you.
And your staffer didn't know this, but the running joke is I'm always his favorite because I'm always the last one to testify. So it looks like the tradition got kept up. And I hope you will indulge me before I start my testimony, if you'll allow me a minute to talk about MORCA. I just came up with some policy recommendations while I was listening. So I'm sorry I don't have it written down. One, like So the three things I would recommend around Morca, as I'm hearing about the plight of our returning citizens trying to find stable housing as well as stable work. As being a hospitality worker, much of that industry does employ returning citizens. And so one of the things I would strongly recommend is, and I know it's been talked about, but I think that it would be a really good conduit or a pipeline to have a hospitality training program for returning citizens. I don't know if that exists, but I do know that is something that has been talked about specifically. Another avenue for work, I think, would be getting our developers to hire returning citizens and giving them a pathway to prosperity. So starting a training program. I know a lot of developer companies do have work training programs for people that they want to hire. So I know they do it mainly for youth, but I think it would also be a good avenue for returning citizens. And then the third thing I would say is that to kind of echo the sentiments of people that have testified earlier, some of the policy matter subject experts that testified, I do think we need to actually reframe the conversation as we're investing in our fellow residents and neighbors. I do find it really disturbing that we sit here and continue to retaliate and punish people who have made mistakes, and they're constantly judged for the worst moment in their lives, and they're never able to recover from that because they're always damned in being able to try to find housing and being able to try to find employment. And I don't know if it's in the Office of Human Rights Act, but I do think being classified as a returning citizen should be a protected trait, because even though we try to say that businesses and housing providers will allow returning citizens in their apartment complexes or their homes or their place of employment, they don't. And so these are policy recommendations. I don't know how to actually execute them, but you have a really brilliant, amazing policy team, and I'm sure they can figure it out. So thank you for indulging me on that, and I will go straight into my testimony. I'm here to actually talk about Office of Tenant Advocate. Good afternoon, Chairperson White. Thank you for holding this hearing and for allowing me to enter my comments into the record. My name is Tripti Patel, and I am a fourth-term Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner representing Single-Member District 2A03, which includes much of the historic Foggy Bottom. I'm here today to speak in strong support of the Office of Tenant Advocate, or OTA, an agency that is absolutely essential to protecting the renters in the district. OTA exists to educate tenants about their rights, to provide legal and technical assistance when disputes arise, to advocate for tenant protections in law and policy, and to provide emergency housing assistance when people are displaced. These services are not theoretical. They are lifelines. I know this not as an ANC, but as a long-term renter who has personally relied on OTA. At hearings like this, we often hear small landlords describe themselves as victims and paint tenants as irresponsible. But when tenants assert their legal rights, many of us are met with bullying, harassment, and retaliation, especially by landlords who are exempt from rent control and feel emboldened by that status. In my case, when I requested a lawful rent credit, I was threatened, falsely accused of breaking a stove, warned not to deduct rent, and accused of running a business out of my apartment. I've paid my rent faithfully for decades, yet my landlord felt entitled to demean and intimidate me, and even directed that behavior towards my elderly mother. Because I knew about OTA, reached out. OTA explained my rights, advised me on my options, and gave me the confidence to enforce the law. With their guidance, I asserted my right to reasonable notice for inspections and denied unlawful entry after repeated hostile interactions. When my landlord failed his inspection and was required to make repairs, his response was retaliation. After securing his business license and RAD registration, he immediately tried to impose a $300 rent increase, ignoring the legally required 90-day cooling off period. He even told me that the law did not apply to me. OTA stepped in, corrected him, and enforced the law, despite attempts by a third-party attorney to challenge OTA's authority. This behavior is not rare, it is common. I have lived in my unit for nearly 23 years. It has never been painted. Some appliances predate my tenancy. My unit has a long-standing mouse problem due to its location to a pathway. Repairs are only made when legally required, and yet I am being asked to pay more for a unit that has not been maintained. And it has even been told by my landlord that the unit is inhabitable, despite his legal obligations to keep it that way. The small landlord narrative has too often been used to excuse abuse and retaliation, leaving tenants with little recourse unless they know where to turn. That is why OTA is so critical. To better protect tenants across the district, I respectfully urge the council to consider 3 things, and I've already said these recommendations before. First, establish an after-hours emergency line at OTA, available 7 days a week. Many of the most serious violations happen outside of business hours when tenants cannot get help. Second, expand OTA staffing and resources. Demand has grown. The agency's workload has outpaced its capacity. Third, increase targeted outreach, particularly to college students and elderly tenants on fixed incomes, 2 groups that are I promise I can talk, I can't say the word today, but they are exploited. Without OTA, situations like mine would break most people. Many tenants do not even know the agency exists, and because of that, I'm still housed, informed, and able to assert my rights. There's no other agency in the country like the Office of the Tenant Advocate. It is a cornerstone of tenant protection in the district. I urge the council to not only maintain its support, but to expand it because the need is real, growing, and urgent. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your commitment to district renters.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And we often hear from folks who have critiques of agencies, not always malicious. Sometimes people are just really upset with agencies, but less often, unless they're put up to it, to testify, hey, I utilized this agency and it really worked. So I appreciate that aspect of your testimony. I also appreciate the recommendations. We have increased funding to expand staffing. Still more needs to be done, but we've added attorneys and support staff over the years. I think we've funded some upgrades to their telephone line. Doesn't quite meet the after hours recommendation, but I want to talk through that with the director. And the increased outreach is something that we have talked to the agency about in the hearing. So we'll keep pushing on those. I generally agree with your recommendations. So I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Chairperson White. And I actually just thought of one more recommendation as I forgot to mention it. And this is born out of the crisis that happened with ERAP late last year. As you know, ERAP went into in-person and several hundred people could not even get into the building. There were many tears. A former colleague of mine reached out to me. I did inform your team of that plight. And the reason why I'm saying, bringing that up is OTA usually is put in a position of being reactive because, and it's through no fault of their own, it's residents don't find out about them until it's like absolute DEFCON crisis situation. And it's almost like, and I don't know if there's a way to do this, but it's kind of now making sure that housing providers automatically provide OTA's contact information to every person that is a renter in the District of Columbia. I think when people rent today, they're given like the tenant bill of rights automatically. I think the contact information for Office of Tenant Advocate should also be provided.
Yeah.
And I know OTA does community-based trainings and just figuring out ways to make sure they're more visible in the community. Like I said, I totally understand they're a very small agency. They are taxed beyond belief. But I do think that the more visibility that OTA has with district renters, that OTA can be a lot more effective and not be more of a crisis triage situation for a lot of these residents. But they can now know how to move and operate because I didn't hit such a bad crisis situation. I was able to be a lot more proactive, and that's completely through Office of Tenant Advocate. And I'm lucky that for my situation, it wasn't more of a triage or a crisis situation. I was able to be put from a position of being reactive to proactive.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will say, we think about recommendations. Something else, it kind of fits within another recommendation you made, which was an after-hours line. And you might think, my first thought was, where are you going to find an expert that knows what they're talking about that's going to work at 10 p.m., 1 a.m. and try to get in a problem-solving mode? I bet everybody in this room has called a number and said, "Hi, this is Jeff. I'm an AI assistant. What can I help you with?" Um, Most of the issues that come to OTA are not coming to them for the first time. So could we utilize AI technology to have an after hours hotline that works people through common problems that has like a two-way dialogue using AI? Absolutely we can, but it does force us to kind of think a little bit differently. So as I get feedback during hearings, I try to, first think about, okay, what are the biggest barriers? And then how do we overcome those barriers? So I am taking these recommendations seriously and thinking about ways that we can meet them. So you've given us a lot of recommendations today.
Okay. Sorry, try not to overwhelm your
No,
brilliant
appreciate it.
staff, but I know this is the place that most people, policy matter experts offer that, and you kind of craft like your next steps from the recommendations we give you.
Yes, indeed. I appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being with us. Right. With that, we are going to bring in virtually Director Shreve with the Office of the Tenant Advocate. And as Director Shreve comes on and queues up, well, let me give her a minute.
I'm here.
Thank you. Give us 1 minute with transitioning. Director Shreve, we can't see you, but I'm hoping you can see us.
I can see you.
All right, so the, don't tell the secretary, but Office of the Tenant Advocate was established in 2006 budget as a division within the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. So this is its 20th birthday. Director Shreve, you've been there all 20 years, so happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Office of Tenant Advocate. Happy birthday to you. We're gonna blow it out for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry.
No problem. No problem.
I'm so sorry that I am not with you today.
Well, we are glad to have you, and even though we celebrate you and the work of your office, we're going to swear you in.
Yes, and my right hand is up.
Thank you very much. Are there any other staff that may be testifying?
Well, all staff is on point. So if they need to, we'll bring them in.
Okay, if they come in, I'll swear them in.
We're swearing everyone in.
Yes.
Rebecca, you're being sworn in. Joel, John Slattery, who's with us, he's new, but we'll swear him in too if he talks. Karen, is Karen Rue here with us?
I think so.
Okay. There's Rebecca. Tamala, where are you? Hi, Rebecca. You can't see me, guys. Can you see me?
No, I can't see you.
Yeah,
No.
you can hear me, but you can't see me. Yeah. I can't see me either. And I'm not muted and I don't know about the video. So I don't know.
I think Joey Trimboli, our legislative counsel, is on as well.
Okay.
I'm here.
All right. All right. I'm going to ask everybody to raise your right hand.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Housing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
Thank you very much. You can begin your testimony.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman White, for remembering that we've been here for 20 years. I'll talk about that a little as I go through testimony. I am Johanna Shreve, the Chief Tenant Advocate and Director of OTA. My testimony today will focus on 4 areas stated in the committee's cover letter for the agency's performance oversight questions. They are: 1, OTA's overall performance in advancing tenant protections, education, and outreach. 2, the continued value of the OTA's data collection and policy analysis to inform effective housing policy. 3, utilization and outcomes of emergency housing funds. And 4, internal processes related to the constituent communication and the case follow-up. Before I remark on the ways we have achieved and advanced tenant protections during the past fiscal year, I wish to mention a few milestones from the agency's history that continue to advance tenant protections on a daily basis as we mark our 20th anniversary. In 2007, we created the Legal Service Provider Program because we didn't have attorneys on staff. There was only 3 of us. This program provided funding to DC attorneys and legal organizations dedicated to taking tenant cases and who collectively did so throughout all 8 wards. This program succeeded in returning over $2 million in damages and settlement awards to the tenant community. In 2009, we developed the DC Tenant Bill of Rights, a comprehensive summary of key legal protections to district renters. And in 2015, the council enacted the requirement that every landlord must provide each rental applicant and each current tenant upon request with a copy of the TBR. In FY25, we were invited to present the district's TBR to the White House Task Force and to help develop a national tenant bill of rights. So we advanced tenant protections nationally by participating in what I consider to be a great honor. This year, we are revising TBR, and we're doing so because of legislative changes that have been made, as you are very aware. Also in 2009, the agency created the Emergency Housing Assistance Program, which to date has assisted over 10,000 individuals with temporary shelter after being displaced by unanticipated events such as fires and building closures. In 2010, the agency played a pivotal role in the creation of the Housing Conditions Court, which allows tenants to seek expedited relief from unabated housing violations. The task of advancing tenant protections in the district comes in many different forms and is the first objective I bring with me to the office each and every day. Advancing tenant protections happens through each of our branches and includes expanding our reach and educational activity into new neighborhoods, sharpening our delivery of legal and intake services, and developing bold legislative and regulatory initiatives to address new cracks in our system of tenant protections. The education and outreach team continues to educate and organize as many tenants as possible throughout the district. In FY25, E&O directly reached 8,653 district tenants, attending 569 events. The branch placed a renewed focus on senior outreach and also on non-English proficient populations, including Spanish and Amharic speakers. In the first quarter of 26, E&O reached 2,948 tenants at 116 events. And last summer, following the opening of the rent registry portal in June, the E&O made targeted efforts to reach elderly tenants and tenants with disabilities in rent control housing to assist them in registering for reduced rent increase caps. We held 11 rent registry clinic events throughout the city at apartment buildings, libraries, and senior centers in partnership with sister agencies, including the Department on Aging and Community Living and the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. I will now discuss the continued value of the OTA data collection and policy analysis to inform effective housing policy. OTA's collection of data consists of our intake database and database fields that provide insight into the main categories of policy concerns for our clients, as well as factual distinctions and nuances that help us identify subtopics for any set of needed reforms. Further information about clients and intake scenarios and insights gained from discussing the legal and policy angles with colleagues in other agency branches and other partners in government, including the council and the committee, and in the community. And finally, we often find great value in consulting with housing provider representatives who can provide important counterfactual information and competing considerations. The committee is now considering two measures developed by OTA through fairly wide-ranging collaboration: utility billing fairness and clarification of the 501F rights of tenants for households displaced by an emergency circumstance. The utility billing proposal emerged largely from situations our clients complained about on a regular basis and comparable client information shared by our policy partners. The 501F proposal was generated largely from the agency's experience administering the emergency housing program and other agency clients impacted by such events as a collapsed ceiling or burst water pipes. For context, Section 501F currently affords tenants several rights where the landlord must evict them to complete work that cannot be safely accomplished while the tenant is present. Associated tenant rights include relocation assistance, the right to return to the unit when the work is complete, and the right to do so at the same rent if the work is necessary to correct housing code violations. In an emergency situation such as a fire or sudden building closure where tenant relocation is immediately necessary, there is no time for either the usual application process or the 120-day notification period. Therefore, tenant 501F rights do not exist in such scenarios. Over the last couple of years, two new issues have brought many district residents through our doors as a result of new ways technology has been deployed in the rental housing context. First, it has become increasingly common for landlords to require tenants to pay rent via an online portal, including additional fees associated with that payment method. The state of California requires landlords to provide tenants with a non-cash, non-electronic rental payment option, and so should the district. Second, a new form of self-eviction, help eviction, has emerged in which a landlord can deny access to a tenant via an electronic lockout from the property without going through the court eviction process. This is clearly an unlawful practice that the OTA helps combat through demand letters or, if necessary, temporary restraining orders. We suggest the council consider penalties specific to this behavior. I will now turn to a policy matter that has been paramount to agency clients over a long period of time. The agency continues to support the elimination of the plus 2% from the CPI plus 2% standard annual rent increase cap for non-elderly, non-disabled tenants under rent control. This additional 2% has an exponential compounding impact on rent levels and contributes to the loss of housing affordability in the district. We have included a chart that shows the compounding effect that this 2% has on the rent compared with a scenario without the 2%. My understanding is that the plus 2% would be reviewed and assessed over time regarding the impact it has on affordability. This has not happened, and I believe now is the time. In terms of quantitative data collection, we are refining our case intake data fields to make them more useful for public policy development. The agency adds data fields in its IQ case management system to capture case categories and subcategories as the intake data warrants. The agency has also undertaken efforts to compile data from our emergency housing program in a digestible format. At the committee's October 30th roundtable on the topic of housing conditions, the OTA presented an analysis of its data on DOB non-fire unit closures in FY25. Not surprisingly, most unit closures in which the OTA provided EHAP services occurred in older buildings, and particularly in Wards 7 and 8. This likely suggests a greater need for preservation funding in older buildings to cover deferred maintenance and repairs. In addition, the OTA was not able to determine the rent control status for a significant portion of the units that were closed. And this may indicate a correlation between administrative noncompliance and building condition dereliction. I will now discuss utilization and outcomes regarding the Emergency Housing Assistance Program. And when I thought about this the other night, I realized that we had failed to mention quite a few things in our testimony. The first is that involved in our emergency housing program, as you are aware, council member, we started an initiative last year in terms of a reimbursement program. And one of the outcomes of creating that reimbursement program has been a closer correlation and a cooperative relationship between the Office of Tenant Advocate and the Office of the Attorney General. We are working with them closely as we speak on a variety of cases now in which they are pursuing these particular housing providers due to negligence and slumlord conditions, and at the same time representing us in recovery of dollars that we have expended in assisting tenants that were subjected to temporary homelessness due to the landlord's failure to comply with the law. Funding pressures. I thank the committee for increasing the budget for EPA by $200,000 in the last budget cycle, bringing the total FY26 appropriation to $770,000. I have to note, however, that the agency has already spent that $200,000 to meet the high demand for the program. Indeed, the program only has $487,757 remaining for FY26. This funding may not last for the rest of the fiscal year. And worse, looking ahead to FY27, I am concerned that there will not be sufficient funding to continue implementing the program at all. In FY25, the OTA spent $987,502 on emergency housing, and we accommodated 324 families. Extrapolating based on an average household size and typically a significant number of larger families apply for our services, we estimate that the services of the emergency housing program served over 1,296 individuals in FY25. 161 families were displaced by fires, and 153 were displaced by non-fire government closures. In the first quarter of FY26, the agency has spent $59,775 for 23 families. 13 of the families were displaced by fires and 10 by non-fire government closures. While we do not track tenant outcomes in emergency housing cases, in FY25, we did address the situation at the Wingate Apartments, which impacted 119 tenants, in which I personally worked with the owner of the property to ensure that tenants were able to return by the time their hotel stays ended. Future funding for the program is up in the air at the moment, given the district's reduced revenues. I will now discuss constituent communication and case follow-up. We are working with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer to implement an intake client satisfaction survey through our Amazon Web Services phone system. Whether these optional surveys will see much uptake is yet to be seen. However, we hope that given the critical services we provide, tenants will oblige and tell us how we did. In terms of case resolution, the OTA estimates that 75% of its cases reach full resolution, meaning that we deliver all of its services that are applicable to the tenant's issue and feasible based on the laws of the district and the resource available to the agency. Of the remainder, about 20% are partially resolved, meaning we have referred the tenant to another agency or organization, and about 5% are not resolved because the OTA cannot assist. Thank you, Chairperson White, and members of this committee for the opportunity to discuss the OTA's performance, for FY25 and the outlook for 26. I welcome any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you very much, Director Shreve. In the spirit of our witnesses today, mostly testifying on another agency, let's start with SMART goals. And these are goals that we set with every agency that align with the mission of the agency to ensure that we can do fair oversight. Each agency does so many things. What we try to do is work with the agency to identify what are the things most critical to their mission that we can track and measure and analyze to see what's working, what's not working. So the first SMART goal from Office of the Tenant Advocate is from June 2025 through FY26 to conduct in-person outreach and registration support events at 20 residential buildings with high concentrations of elderly and or disabled tenants, and assist at least 500 tenants in creating rent registry accounts while collecting information about tenants' intended use. The status from the agency is partially completed, partially changed. So after this goal was set, the rent registry requirement that tenants must have an email address in order to register was eliminated, thereby reducing the urgency of this goal. However, OTA still assisted tenants with registering at 9 events in 2025. So, Director, your first SMART goal is focused on helping seniors, well, residents, but particularly seniors, register with the new rent registry that finally launched last year. How many residents has OTA successfully helped with the rent registry?
I'm not sure the number. I know we had 11 training sessions. I'd have to get the staff. Let me see on this chart whether or not it tells us about that particular 496.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, we helped 496. You do have I think we gave you the chart. If we didn't, we'll make sure that you receive it. That shows you all of the 2025 education and outreach events. And I think there was about 496. Or that just might be 4% of the total of activities that they participated in. Let me back away from that number and ask that staff to hit that number.
Okay. Yeah, we can follow up, and I know that the number of people was in that the outreach team reach was high, which was in your testimony. But if your team could get back to us specifically on the rent registry piece, I would appreciate it.
Not a problem. And you recognize why we're doing that because of the seniors. In most instances, they don't have. They may not have emails and they may not have smartphones.
Yes.
To accomplish that. That's why we were very, very concerned about making sure that that was taken care of.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Yes, and appreciate your efforts on that. At least 4 of the registration events were held at libraries. Were those targeted to elderly and disabled residents?
I'm not going to say yes or no. I know that they held them at libraries, and I know that they worked with the library to put notification out that we were going to be there. Now, whether or not they focused specifically on the elderly, I can't tell you. I don't know who participated, but it would have to have been either elderly or disabled tenants, because those are the only 2 that qualify.
Right. So given the change to the rent registry process, we had to move away from the email requirement for the obvious reasons. This 500 tenant registration target no longer is an urgent or current need. So what measurable outcome should replace it so that the goal captures OTA's impact and contributes to successful rent registry? How should we pivot at this point?
In terms of the measurable outcome on that one, let me talk to that staff. Because it may very well be that we need to revise it to replace that. We may have succeeded. They indicate that we have completed our task, which was to hold the events. And then after talking to RHA about what they would accept, if you had already registered, there was no need, I believe, to re-register into the new system some sort of way, where the housing provider could assist. But I'll ask them what they think the new measurable outcome should be on that particular piece.
Okay, let's work together on that between now and the budget hearing.
Not a problem.
Perfect. The second SMART goal was to complete a collaborative update of the Tenant Bill of Rights, and you mentioned this in your statement. It would include legal, tenant, and housing provider review, and lead a citywide education and distribution campaign to ensure the updated document and required lease addendum are accessible and circulated. Dissemination would occur through at least 10 high-impact channels like OTA's website, listservs of partners such as DCAR and AOBA, public libraries, things like that, by Q3 of fiscal year 26. The status that we've gotten
It's in
from the
progress
agency
now.
is that the agency completed a draft in May of 25, but
Yeah.
paused after it became clear that the Rental Act would change the eviction and TOPA law. So a revised version is expected to be completed on April 1st, shifting the timeline from Q1 to Q3. Is that still the timeline?
Yes,
Okay.
that's still the timeline. We're on target for that. In fact, today we got our first complaint about that particular subject. The
Okay.
TOPA notification by a landlord.
Okay.
So it's definitely got to get out by April 1st so that we can get this back out on the street properly, because, and there has to be some work with DHCD on this matter also.
What partners did you consult during the drafting and rollout planning?
You mean for the TBR?
Yes.
They go back to the individuals that we have worked with in the past, say OBA, GCAR. We go to the housing provider side, and then we go to the non-profit legal side, the Office of the Attorney General, Legal Aid, Bread for the City, the elderly group. We'll also be talking to Department of the Elderly. We look at those agencies to weigh in on this particular document. We always have.
Okay.
Is there anything you want evidence by that in terms of, do you want you know, a sign-in sheet or anything like that to talk about the people that are involved in collaborating with us on any changes that we might be making to the Tenant Bill of Rights?
No, the way these things go is, if you miss a constituency, we're all going to hear about it. So we'll know.
Try not to. I don't think we've ever had a complaint about that. We always, it's open to the public. We want everyone, particularly those groups that have a interest and a reason to participate, to be a part of it. And we always have had gone back to those that we collaborated with in the beginning after we created the first version of the TBR.
Okay. And aside from people are required to get a copy of the TBR when they sign the lease, is that right?
They're supposed to get it when they go in for file for an application.
Okay. And so for someone like Trupti Patel, who testified earlier, who's been in her unit, I think she said some 20 years, filed that application a long time ago. Let's assume she doesn't have internet access. How might she come across the TBR?
Well, I'm making the assumption that housing providers have hard copies of the TBR available to all tenants, and a tenant can request a copy of the tenant bill of rights from their housing provider. If they don't get it that way, they can call our office and we will mail them a copy of it. We are looking at a new design to ensure that it's as sleek and small as possible, because I want people to be able to read it and to understand it. So it may be done by keywords this time. I'm not sure what our design is going to look like, but clearly it is available in more than an internet form, even though it is on our website. We want to make sure that individuals are able to receive it in more than one format.
Okay. And I guess if it's widely distributed, people realize it exists. So you can only request something if you know it exists. And I want to make sure people know it exists if they signed a lease a long time ago. The third SMART goal is to develop a billing and lien authority rulemaking for publication in the DC Register by the end of fiscal year 26, setting forth the process for exercising OTA's billing and lien authority under the Emergency Housing Assistance Program, EHAP, and issue at least one notice of assessment, NOA, in a case where a housing provider is found liable if such a case arises during the year. And the EHAP is one of the programs that you spoke about in your testimony. In terms of the status, an NOA has been issued, I believe, and OTA is in the process of developing written standard operating procedures. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we are working on a second NOA as I speak to you on a second property. We have been in constant conversation with the Office of the Attorney General, who has undertaken several cases on behalf of the city, as well as the inclusion of the return of these dollars that are owed to the government, the OTA, for expenditures provided in temporary shelter for tenants. So in one case, a Columbia Road property, $260,000, Benning Apartments, $144,000. And then we are working with them, council member, on a larger project for one housing provider that has 83 properties in the city. He is a slumlord, and we are working with him and identifying which properties we have provided assistance to thus far.
Okay. So the NOA you're pursuing now, that's the first one?
Yes, the NOA is the first one. That is correct.
Okay.
And there was some complications because there was a bankruptcy involvement in that NOA that required, and it was out of state. So the Office of the Attorney General had to they had to do a little hop, skipping, and jumping on that one. But in conversation with the attorneys for the other side, they have been very cooperative about and recognize and committed to reimbursing the government for the funds that we spend it on that particular event.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we're pursuing reimbursement. This is an important program and something you've worked on and advocated to improve. So I appreciate that. Before I turn to my colleague, Councilmember Felder, let me try to run through at least a couple of the KPIs or key performance indicators. So the first one is the amount returned to tenants from settlements, damages, savings. And the status is that in FY25, the monthly average was $16,694 for a total of $200,328 in FY25. For the first quarter of FY26, the monthly average is $47,900 and a total just for the first quarter of about $144,000. I won't run through all of them, but you know, I like the progress I'm seeing in a lot of places. So OTA sends monthly updates to the committee with data on evictions, emergency housing spending, intake calls, online inquiries, and dollars returned to tenants from settlements or damages, which I just mentioned. Want to just ask a couple of questions about evictions. How is OTA using eviction data to identify tenants who might need early intervention before a case reaches the courts?
We have not. The information that we receive on the data that we receive, council member, strictly comes from the U.S. Marshal's office.
Okay.
We track that information. The focus that we had was on what services those tenants were going to need. Because in I would say 60% of all cases, 67, 80% of all cases, it's a non-payment of rent issue.
Okay.
So in other cases, when we deal with eviction prevention or a remediation is when it comes to the intake side and they say, I'm about to be evicted and this is the issue. We then do the research at the tenant's request to determine whether or not there is cause for the OTA to engage in a limited representation on behalf of that tenant. And if there is not, we will not pursue the remediation because we inform tenants in all cases, it is important to pay your rent.
Right.
If there is a conflict of interest, if there is a problem with the property, it is not being managed properly. That is where we have the bigger place to use the forces of the law.
Okay.
To intervene is usually much more effective on the front end when you journalize, and we hold a class, I believe, with our educational folks on journalization and how do you journalize violations. You know, we've got the True Detective course that we're teaching you how to use resources in the government so that you are gathering the necessary data for a case to be built against that landlord.
Okay. So, all right, I copy that. So how is OTA then analyzing eviction data to identify systemic issues like repeat filings by certain landlords, and what steps follow that analysis?
We have not to date created an analytical profile on the eviction side. We
Okay.
have served as the intermediary for the federal government to publicize the information on evictions. But the funding for eviction prevention was provided to the bar. I believe the DC bar received those funds, or the foundation received those funds, and they allocated those funds to various legal entities throughout the city to deal with eviction prevention.
Mm,
But
okay.
OTA was not one of the agencies that received any of those funds.
Okay. And last question before I hand it over to recognized Councilmember Felder. Do you share eviction data with other agencies in DC?
The eviction data is on our website.
Oh, okay.
Anyone can access the information from us on our website. We have a spreadsheet that is maintained by our office on the administrative side, and that information is public information.
Interesting. So I could look it up through your website by address?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
And tenants go to that website to confirm their eviction time. We know who is scheduled for eviction on each day of the month, given the information we receive from the U.S. Marshal's office. We are getting ready to hold a conversation with the U.S. Marshal's office, however, because prior to, I would say, a year ago, that information was forthcoming in a serious flow, regular flow. Now the information is a little less. We may get it every other week or something like that. And I think that that is a concern for me. We need to have as much information as soon as possible, but I have to talk to the marshal's office to find out what's changed in their world, because the gentleman, as an example, that we dealt with on a regular basis moved on. So, I think government agencies have had a few hiccups as it relates to the new administration.
No.
No.
Let me turn to Councilmember Felder. Do you have an opening statement or just questions? Excellent. Well, welcome to my Ward 7 colleague, Wendell Felder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for today's oversight hearing. I'll just jump right in. Could you walk us through OTA's intake and case management process when the tenant, for example, reports mold in their unit, and explain how that process differs when the issue is building wide and may require tenant relocation?
First and foremost, mold is not a qualifying issue for the OTA. The issue of mold needs to be addressed with the Department of Energy. They are the site who handles mold. They are the experts on the mold issue. If you contact our office and you indicate that you have mold, the first thing we're going to say is, you need to tell us, can you feel the dampness of that wall? Can you tell us where that wetness is? Because mold comes from someplace. We're going to educate the tenant on the terminologies that will be most effective in talking to the Department of Buildings, as an example. DOB is not the mold expert either. But if you tell them that you've got water coming down your walls, they can come out and deal with that and cite the owner for that issue.
Well, thank you for that. Could you speak to how you all coordinate with other DC government agencies like DBA, DOB, DHS, OAG, for example?
The Office of the Tenant Advocate coordinates with the Department of Buildings on a daily basis. When we have a tenant complaint filed with our office, we will inform, first of all, we will ask the question, have you contacted DOB and scheduled an inspection? If in fact there is a crisis issue, we will contact DOB in many instances and talk to inspectors that we are familiar with and request kindly if we can get an inspection on that day. Inspections are something that happen 24/7. So DOB has a system. They require people to get into their database and their dashboard so that they have accountability on who called and when they called. We deal with the Department of Human Services on a regular basis as it relates to emergency housing. Anytime there is an emergency housing activity that occurs in the city, we are triaging with those government agencies that have a reason to be involved. That could be HCMA, that could be the Department of Buildings, it could be the Department of Human Services, it could be Department of for the elderly, depending on the demographics of the emergency. We started that particular triage system probably in 2011, because it became clear that in many instances, particularly in emergency housing, where children were involved, the Department of the Superintendent of Schools, we were going to need individuals helping us with ensuring that children who were in a hotel situation, temporary shelter situation, were able to get to school. And so we were dealing with them to ensure that we got all of the school issues resolved for the children. If in fact, and when it came to the social elements of the family, Department of Human Services, in particular, Strong Families, were working with us in a close spaces. They do the assessment of families to determine what their actual needs are. We do not provide food cards. We do not provide a lot of the services that are provided by other agencies.
Copy. Now, if you don't need OTA services, then most of the times, the average resident, specifically in Ward 7, wouldn't know what's happening. How are you guys communicating any upcoming events or the services that you provide to everyday residents?
OTA participates in table events in every ward of the city. As such indicated, we've already been involved in 116th thus far in the first quarter of this year. All an organization has to do is to contact us. We get calls from ANC commissioners. We get calls from nonprofit organizations. We get calls from the MOKER's office to participate in tabled events across the city, and we show up.
Copy. Now, attending an event is one thing, but on the other hand, like, how do you guys evaluate whether outreach or the outreach that you actually are doing is reducing evictions, improving housing conditions, or even increasing tenant knowledge? What metrics do you use?
Well, we offer our Renters' Rights 101 course, which allows us to do a little pre-testing of the tenants when they're involved in those courses to try and help them understand the rules and engagement. I have a philosophy. If you do not know the rules, you cannot play the game. And so our job is to make sure that every tenant in the district is involved. We have an annual summit every year. We hold stakeholder meetings every quarter. We have, like I say, we have formulation of tenant associations on properties across the city, of which we've gotten 98 new tenant associations in the last several years. On January the 26th, there is a citywide tenant meeting, and my staff will be there. So hopefully there'll be tenants from every ward in the city participating, and anything that we need to provide, such as a tenant resource guide, which we will be providing to every tenant that participates.
Copy. Now, how are you tracking buildings who may constantly come up in your system as like various issues? Do you guys have a different a certain tracking system? How are you tracking repeated problems of properties?
As I indicated before, right now we're working on one of the biggest projects the city has seen, and that's one housing provider who owns 83 units across the city, 83 properties.
Mm-hmm.
He is a slumlord of the highest value that we've ever seen. We work with the Office of the Attorney General, who spends a great deal of their time tracking that information that you're talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Felder. So want to talk about a couple issues. First is data integration and coordination with other agencies. Tenants very often face confusion about who owns their building, which causes accountability and agency coordination issues when disputes arise. Do you have examples of where this confusion has caused problems in your work in this space?
Bring me the question again.
So I hear from tenants, sometimes I hear concerns and I ask who their management company is, and they aren't sure. Or they'll tell me the name of an entity and I say, do they own the building or is that the management company? And they'll say they don't know. Is that something that you experience?
Yes, it happens every day. Tenants normally are not, when they apply for a property, a house, a place to live, the last thing they're thinking about is who owns the building. All they know is that this building's got some open apartments and I need one and I'm going to apply. If the tenant calls our office, we have a protocol. The protocol requires our staff to start at the beginning, which is I need to know who owns the property, who the management company is. And in order to get all of that information, there's a variety of sources that you have to go to. There's a recorder of deeds, It used to be that you could go to over to the rent administrator's office. Now that things have changed, and hopefully soon, a lot of this information will be in one place and everybody will be able to access it. But most people do not start off thinking about who owns my building.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, if someone makes a complaint, and what, maybe it's with OTA, maybe it's with the Office of the Attorney General, maybe it's with the Housing Committee, and the management company is, you know, Robert White Building Management. They may give that name to one of us. They may not know the name of the management company. They may know the name of the ownership company. I'm trying to get a sense of who in the city is identifying or could best be in the position to identify consistent complaints against an owner or a management company. That's what I'm essentially trying to get at. How do we create, how do we create that database?
Well, I've got to believe that the Department of Buildings is going to have that baseline information based on the number of complaints that they receive from tenants. It would seem to me, and probably it's a conversation that I can have that conversation with Keith Parsons if you'd like. But I would imagine that the Department of Buildings is in the best position to know where we're getting the highest level of complaints. Because all building complaints go through their office. They don't go through mine. I don't get all building complaints. But I would imagine that DOB does.
But they don't necessarily get the complaints that come to your office, right?
Oh, sure they do.
Okay.
I'll give you an example, 7710 Eastern Avenue. This was last week. Keith and I were on the phone last week because here was a building with 8 buildings, a property with 8 buildings, Tacoma Flats. And one of the buildings had been without heat for a week. And the email came into our office. I got onto it, called the attorney in question, found out the situation, got on Teams, wrote to Keith. He and I got involved in it. I said, I want you to do this. He said, well, we've already done that. Then I found out that they had done an inspection on January the 12th, which had not made it to the dashboard yet. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be talking to DOB about, because I don't understand that dashboard process and how long it takes for a inspection to reach the dashboard. This is not pushing them under the bus. It's just saying that Johanna's trying to find out that information.
Right.
And so in that particular instance, council member, the two of us at the 2 agencies, we worked through it. And by the time we got to the end of the conversation at the end of the period, what had happened was the management company had then sent out an email to the tenants. The tenant sent the email to me. We found out that the new hot water heater had been purchased from a different supplier. It was being delivered on the 16th of January. And I assume, based on if it was delivered on the 16th, that they could get it installed and that hot water be turned back on. And that's how we dealt with that one problem. Now, in another instance, we had a contact from a tenant who didn't have heat at 1841 Columbia Road. Okay, so here,
But let me get a little more specific. The first example was helpful, but if we are trying to get a handle on who are DC residents most consistently complaining about, does it cause any issue on your end if they don't know the name of their management company or they don't know who owns the building? Does that cause a problem if we want to collect that data?
Our protocol requires that we go out and find out who owns the building.
Okay.
I'm going to know before the case manager or the attorney can talk to the tenant. They need baseline information. And the protocol that I have set up since beginning of time, I want to know who owns the building. I want to know when it was built, because we want to know whether it's a rent control property too. I want to know the management company may be something that is not going to be on file unless I'm going to look at the registration side.
Okay.
Okay, but in terms of the ownership of the property, we're going to know who owns the property.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Yeah,
But
and
I think that, but again, let me reiterate, I do believe that it is a DOB uh, feature because they get, I would say, 98% of all the complaints, and they have to know who owns the property. They're talking to those people.
okay. My time for this round is up. Let me turn to my colleague, Councilmember Felder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jumping right in, could you speak to how OTA tracks outcomes such as resolution rates, court appearances, or displacement prevention by ward?
Not today. If you
Um,
want me to do that, that's not an analysis that I have done in the past, but if it's something that you're asking us to create.
Okay. Well, in FY 2025, Ward 7 recorded 635 OTA intake cases. What were the most common housing issues reported by Ward 7 residents specifically?
I can't tell you that today. I'd have to go back and look at the data.
Please, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Councilmember White and I, we've had an opportunity to engage with a number of residents in a community called Benham Park. And
But Benning Park is not a tenant base. You know, they own the property. They're
Well,
owners.
no, this is my next, I was leading into my next question. This
Okay.
was separate from that question, but my question is, Ward 7 has seen multiple large-scale displacements tied to chronic building neglect and illegal construction, including places like Benham Park and 751st Street Northeast. My
Yes.
question to you is, could you speak to what, if any, early warnings or coordination mechanisms exist to alert OTA of these types of properties before conditions escalate to displacement?
When you say displacement, you mean closure of the property?
All the above, closure of the property, residents having to leave because of inhumane conditions, all the above.
In terms of the information that we collect, the data that we collect, I would have to go back and do an analysis by month and look at the complaints coming in to determine where the red flag would jump at me, so that we would have a better indication of what we could or could not do. When the outreach staff goes out, they are the first line that hears the rumble in the community. And they report that back to us. But our limited staff and our limited resources does not give me the ability to, and I don't have the enforcement authority to change or to challenge that particular housing provider. I would then have to consult with the housing community, the housing division of the Office of the Attorney General, who does have the enforcement authority to notify the property that they are out of compliance.
Copy. Could you speak to how many tenant associations participating in the Tenant Association Peer Mentorship Program are located in Ward 7?
I can't give you that exact number. I can't give you that exact number today, but we will.
Okay. One of your agency's FY 2026 SMART goals was to assist elderly tenants and tenants with disabilities registered with the Rental Accommodations Division.
Yes.
Now, based on the pre-hearing responses, no outreach or education events regarding this goal took place in Ward 7 in FY 2025. My question is, why is Ward 7 absent of outreach? And are there any plans to conduct events in Ward 7 in FY 2026?
In terms of the rent registry,
Mm-hmm.
if they were omitted, I'm not sure why. I will talk to the staff and get back to your office next week with an answer to why we have not gone there, and but it's not that we can't.
Hobby. My office continues to hear from constituents that the OTA's intake lines is not being answered and that callbacks are not occurring. Could you speak to who is accountable for returning calls and how is the intake line monitored?
The intake line is monitored on a daily basis. All calls made to the Office of the Tenant Advocate are registered. If a tenant does not leave a name, when they call, their phone number may very well be there. We may not call back the phone number. But anybody that calls the office, we receive documentation of all calls that come into the office. We changed our phone system to handle just what you're talking about. I got a call from a council member indicating someone said that they had called our office and that we had not returned the phone call. So we changed the phone call. We went to a new Amazon format. And so anyone that calls us can leave a message on our phone 24/7.
Okay, but not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
just want to get a couple more questions in, but how are you tracking if internally your staff are calling residents back who need the services?
How do I track? I don't. I have not.
Okay, that's problematic, but thank you. Something to consider will be implementing a system to do that, especially with the recent passing of the Rental Act. My only further question this round is, I know that you guys, if a resident is displaced, you guys direct work with hotels to make sure that they have temporary stay. My question is, in the event that a number of constituents are complaining about the same poor conditions of a hotel, what happens in that instance? Do you guys stop engaging with the hotel? Do you find another hotel to work with? Do you have a list of hotels that are within a specific network? How does that work?
Well, you're asking me a question that I've never confronted before. I have not heard of tenants complaining about the hotel. We work with a network of hotels throughout the city. And we work with the network of hotels throughout the city in order to primarily accommodate the tenant population that we are serving. If you live in Ward 7, we try to place you in a hotel that is close to where you lived, so that if you have children, your children can go to school. If you are living in a hotel where you are having a problem, calling our office and our office doing investigations to find out what the problem is would be our first step. We work with every management company that owns hotels throughout the city, and we have a very good reputation of the hotels that we use. So can you give me a better example of what you are addressing? Because this is a first. I've not heard of tenants calling us and complaining about the hotel.
I've heard complaints that have varied from not having a stove to rodent issues to bed bugs to mold to leaks, etc.
Well, I would only say to you, council member, that if that is the case, I have not heard that reported back to me from my staff. We do an inspection of the hotels that we use. I won't say that we inspect every room. I will also say that in terms of the bed bug question, that particular issue is a hotel nightmare for all hotels, whether you pay $100 a night or whatever. In terms of mold and leaks, I don't recall us placing our people in those types of hotels, but if that is the case, I'm not aware that we got calls back from a tenant who was placed in the hotels. And let me start by talking about the stove. Yes, there probably is not a stove. Right. There might be a microwave, but in most instances, there won't be a stove.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. On the EHAP program and hotels, so OTA consistently exhausts its EHAP funds. You mentioned in your testimony that you are on track to exhaust them this year. I was proud to add $200,000 to the emergency housing assistance program for the FY26 budget, but demand is still higher than the amount of funding in that program. Do you, is there any hope that you have at this point of more funding in EHAP next year than there is this current fiscal year?
We have no funding. Due to the mark, we had to zero the program out. We won't have a program next year.
Oh, Lord.
Yes.
Okay. With the existing program, is a stay in a hotel the only option? Like,
Yes,
okay.
it is the only option. It is the most efficient emergency program currently in the entire United States. We're the only place in the United States, Chairman, that provides this service to tenants. If this service is in 2009, when I created this service, I began to piggyback on the back of Red Cross. At that time, they provided 3 days. And they changed their protocol to providing a gift card.
Mm.
So if this program is not funded, again, we are talking about come FY27, tenants will be homeless or put in shelters. And there's not enough shelters to handle the demand that we handle. Let's go back as an example to 2018 when we had 162 tenants at Arthur Capers Senior. You tell me where in this city we would have put 162 seniors if we had not had the emergency housing program. We housed all seniors in 24 hours. They were in hotels for 5 months before they were moved into their next permanent home.
Yeah.
So this program has served as the most efficient, and it's low key. Once we get a call, we go to work, and the business is done. And our relationship with the industry is absolutely at the top. We work with small housing providers who own these hotels. So a lot of economic development positives have occurred for the city in working with small owners of these franchises where we have housed a lot of people. The comments that were made to me a moment ago, I will now investigate because I've never heard them before in 16 years. Mold, bed bugs, that sort of stuff. But I will investigate that. But this is the game. This is the real game. And I don't know what we'll do if this program is not funded in 27.
All right, we will have to work through that. For your legal intake system, OTA reported that you're reorganizing that legal intake system to expand capacity, including hiring a new litigation attorney. Has that happened yet?
John Slattery, who I would have introduced to you this afternoon, came to last Monday. Karen Drew came the first week in January. Yes, the two lawyers are on board.
Excellent. How has that changed the intake process?
It has not. I mean, they're going through their orientation period this month. Getting familiar and getting ready to go to work. Our current senior advisory attorney will be moving into working specifically in litigation, and our current deputy supervisory attorney will become supervisory attorney over the other attorneys. So we are working now on improving the intake process as we speak, but it is in the formulative stage.
Okay. So I get what the organization chart will look like, but how do you anticipate things being different for agency clients?
We answer the majority of all intakes that come in, and it's an average of about 225 a week. We answer all calls that we receive within 48 hours. It used to be 28, but the demand is great, and we have now a greater number of intakes that walk into the office on a weekly basis. So, and those numbers that you guys receive will sort of demonstrate that. But we do respond to all of the calls within 48 hours and set up whatever the next level of representation or resolution of the case may be.
Okay. I've on that piece that Councilmember Felder brought this up, and I have to bring it up as well. We do receive complaints about callbacks. So I want to flag that again. I don't know what's being missed between the folks who are reaching out to my office, Councilmember Felder's office, and the data on your end, but we do have to figure that out.
If someone could email me if that occurs, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
I mean, I think if that happens, then it gives me a better sense of what I need to be doing. But if I don't know, I don't know, and I don't know.
All right. For the purpose of trying to reverse engineer, what I'll do is ask my team, next time we get a complaint about this, let's try to deal with it in real time so that we can use it as an example to figure out what's happening.
Yes.
Perfect. So OTA, we've heard from OTA that staffing limitations, data validation, and competing priorities cause missed deadlines, including for the publication of the annual report. And there was a request to move the annual report submission deadline from February 1st to April 1st for those reasons. But this is an annual report due on February 1st for the previous fiscal year, which ends October 31st. So why is 3 months not enough time to do that report?
Well, let's start with October. October is the first month of budget. Budget season starts in October every year.
That's 4 months. Okay.
Then we're followed by 2 months of we move into the holiday season. Now we get into the brand new year. And then we sometimes we get notification of reports that are due or hearings that we should be attending. And so focusing on that. You know, it's just small items like that. Then we get into a crisis of an emergency housing situation, like 119 tenants in one property. I can't give you anything more than the human side of it, which is, yes, the year ends September 31st. I mean, excuse me, September 30th. And you would think that come October 1st, I'd have it all done, but it doesn't work that way. We have a period of time where we have to look at the information that we have, and I guess I should use a bigger whip to whip them into shape to get this information out.
Maybe. I'm curious how long these holiday breaks are. I might have to come work over there.
It just appears that the human condition of the things that we have to do. I mean, the demand that's placed on the staff on a weekly basis is great. I mean, 200 and some case calls a week, and every case requires a certain amount of time to process and to resolve. So I'll take the whip and the beating for not having the report in on time. And I will work my tail off to make sure that it is getting on time, except you may not get this one on time because I had to prepare for my hearing this month.
Well, I appreciate it. Let's get this one done, and then we'll work together on the timing going forward.
Okay, okay.
I won't talk through all of the legislative proposals. The utility one you laid out, we're working closely with you and your team on legislation to increase transparency and fairness in utility billing by requiring housing providers to clearly explain and itemize all charges that a tenant will be responsible for during their lease. Utility bills have caused a great deal of anxiety and debt for folks these days. But I do want to jump into the recommendation to eliminate the 2% rent control increase, which you mentioned in your testimony. You believe, OTA believes, that this heavily contributes to the loss of affordable housing in DC. How would you respond to housing providers who might say this change would have a significant impact on their ability to maintain their properties? If you are speaking, Director, I can't hear you.
Well, all of a sudden the mute came on. I don't know. I don't know what happened. What I would say to the housing providers is that you successfully won what you were after, which was TOPA. What I would say about the 2% is that when the deal was cut, which was prior to my joining the government, there was a trade-off. And one of the conditions of the trade-off was that they would come back and look at the 2% and whether or not affordability was being impacted. And it definitely has been impacted. And individuals and many tenants write us about the 2%. Too many tenants write us about the 10%. And I believe that we have been making headway in terms of tracking this. And I do believe you have the chart in your testimony that shows you the compounding effect. And it reminded me of the mark-to-mark that occurred on the federal side, where they rolled back all the rents because they had exceeded the market. I believe for individuals who have lived in properties for a very long time that are in rent control housing, they are paying more because of the 2%. And why not stick to the CPI? Why can't why won't the CPI suffice as the increase, since it's an automatic increase and not one in which you have to validate why you need the increase, which is another subject matter. But the 2% is something that I believe whose time has now come and gone.
Okay. I think this is my last question, but one of the other recommendations, legislative recommendations, is a mandatory reserve account required for all landlords to maintain replacement reserve accounts. To your knowledge, have other jurisdictions been successful instituting reserve account requirements?
The federal government started it, yes, and I do believe there are other jurisdictions which we can point out to you. It does a variety of things. It provides, first and foremost, a requirement that all housing providers, housing owners, do a replacement reserve analysis. The analysis then provides them with the operational costs they need to set aside. It's like a savings account to ensure that they are able to handle the long-term, the short-term, and the medium-term needs of the property without the tenants having to pay for something they don't own. The capital improvement petition that we have could be eliminated if we put in the replacement reserve accounts. Why should tenants pay for someone else's asset? That to me is sort of a contradiction. The federal government required all properties that receive federal funds to establish a replacement reserve account. It's good business. And I would believe if we look into commercial businesses in this city, you will find that the market rate properties all have replacement reserve accounts. You
Correct.
need to know, how much money you need to replace the amenities, to replace the roof, to replace the appliances, that sort of stuff.
Right, and that somebody coming in to purchase actually can do that, which would be one indication they don't intend to be a slumlord.
Exactly.
Okay. Director, I want to thank you for being with us today. Thank you to you and your team for the work that you all are doing. Those are all the questions I have for you today.
Thank you, Chairman White, for having me, and hopefully we have provided you with clarity with regards to how we operate, and any questions that you may have, I look forward to responding.
Thank you very much. We will move to our final government witness, Acting Director Talib Shakir, with the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens Affairs, and Jordan Seed, Deputy Director of the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens Affairs. Right. Before we begin, let me start by saying welcome and swearing in you, Director, and your team, anybody who may be testifying or answering questions. So I ask that you all raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Housing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You can begin your testimony, and if you would start by also introducing who is at the witness table with you. Welcome.
So good afternoon, Councilmember White. With me, I have my staff, Jordan Seed, who is the Director of Operation. I have Ms. Sylvie here, who's over our workforce development team.
You will have to move the microphone.
Oh,
closer.
yeah, not talk.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. And I have Ms. Davis, who's over our case management team. Before I begin the testimony, I would like to say I want to thank everybody who came and testified today, whether they spoke, positively or otherwise about our office. It's good to hear that information, that critique. It only helps us and allow us to get better. With that, I proceed. My name is Tyler. Well, good afternoon, Chairperson White, members of the committee, council staff, members of the public, and the dedicated staff of the Mayor's Office on Return to Citizens Affairs. My name is Talib Shakir, and I'm honored to appear before you today as the incoming or the acting executive director of the Mayor's Office on Return to Citizens Affairs, otherwise known as MORCA. I assumed this role approximately 40 days ago. My testimony reflects MORCA's institutional record during the reporting period, as well as my initial assessment of the office operations and service environment. I want to briefly situate today's testimony in context. Last year's oversight hearing identified gaps in transparency and execution, and FY25 focused on correcting those issues. I'm pleased to provide performance oversight testimony from FY25 and to date, FY26 for MORCA, which serves as the district's central coordination and navigation office for residents returning from incarceration. Our mission is to assess the needs of returning citizens and connect them to necessary resources. MORCA uses a hybrid approach that includes direct service delivery, as well as connecting constituents to the appropriate government agencies and community-based organizations that provide those services. In FY25, MORCA connected 5,738 people to services, reflecting the trust that returning citizens, their family, and community partners places in our work. Throughout FY25, MORCA continued to experience high demand for services from our clients, including vital documents and identification, housing and employment and workforce development, legal resources, transportation, and access to behavioral health support. Many clients arrive with multiple overlapping needs that require sustained engagement and repeated coordination with external partners. While certain services are frequently requested,
The issue that consumes the most staff time often involve untreated behavioral health needs, housing instability, documentation delays, and emergency situations. In most scenarios, cases require multiple follow-up visits before resolution, reflecting the complexity of the barriers returning citizens face. Housing insecurity remains one of the most significant challenges our constituents experience. I must note that MOCA does not own or operate housing units, nor does independently issue housing vouchers. And since FY '24, MOCA has not received new housing vouchers. Housing placement during FY '25 and FY '26 relied on recycled vouchers originally issued in prior years or referred through partner agencies and community-based providers. During the reporting period, Marker referred 38 individuals for housing vouchers. Of those referrals, 26 were approved, 15 were placed into housing, and there are 11 remaining approval but are pending placement. 11 remain approved but are pending placement. The average timeline from referral to placement ranging from 6 months to 1 year, depending on eligibility review, documentation submission, unit availability, and landlord discretion. Requests for assistance obtaining identification of vital records represents a significant portion of Morca's workload. Access to identification is foundationally to secure housing, employment, and public benefits. In FY '25, Morca staff provided services to 5,738 clients and 1,270 to date in FY '26. Morca assists clients in navigating these processes and connecting them to available waiver programs. Employment and work enforcement development remains central to successful reentry. Morca refers clients to workforce programs operated by district agencies and community-based organizations and work to prepare returning citizens for employment through in-house job readiness training and external referrals. In FY '25, Morca completed 949 workforce assessments for returning citizens. During this period, 8 individuals completed the Morca Georgetown paralegal program, and 9 returning citizens are hired through access to job grantees. Additionally, Morca worked with DC Water to onboard 3 district returning citizens as customer service representatives in the 301 division. In FY '25, Morca hosted or co-sponsored 61 events designated to support and returning citizens at every stage in their reentry journey, from stabilization and healing to economic mobility and long-term self-sufficiency. These events included listening sessions and reunification trips, as well as new programming tailored to the diverse needs of our community. Morca launched a first-time home buyers series to equip returning residents with the knowledge and resources needed to provide home ownership, help participants understand credit, lending, and district-based assistance programs. We also curated the Perfect Brush and Art Gallery exhibition that highlighted the work of 3 returning citizens and provided them with a platform to showcase and sell their artwork. In addition, Morca organized a mental health community walk, a family-friendly event designed to raise awareness about the range of behavioral health challenges individuals face and to connect residents with supportive resources. Beyond these initiatives, Morca staff attended 220 outreach events across the district, engaging 3,260 constituents and ensuring that returning citizens could access information, services, and community support wherever they were in the reentry process. Morca Works relies heavily on interagency coordination with partners including Department of Correction, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the Department of Behavioral Health. Together, we work to address the various needs of returning citizens. In FY '25, we created case plans for 2,465 individuals seeking services. The office tracks service requests, referrals, and known outcome through a comprehensive assessment process that identifies each client's needs, goals, and available support. Based on this assessment, case managers develop individualized case plans that address immediate concerns as well as short and long-term objectives. Each plan includes a combination of internal and external referral tailored to the client's circumstances. FY '25 emphasized tracking what we can reliably measure and clearly identifying system limits. Peer navigators play a critical role in ensuring follow-through. They conduct follow-up calls and provide in-person support
to help clients complete each referral. During this process, peer navigators document the status of every referral and assist clients in resolving challenges as they arise, either by addressing the issue directly or by reconnecting them with the appropriate service provider. As acting executive director, I'm committed to supporting staff, strengthening coordination with partner agencies, and delivering substantial outcomes for the returning citizen population. In closing, Mark is proud of the work we accomplished in FY25 to connect returning citizens to housing resources, work development programs, and behavioral health assistance. We will continue to serve as a critical point of connection for returning citizens navigating complex systems during reentry. Morgan's outcomes reflect the dedication of his staff and the quality of the innovative programming that we manage. With continued support from Mayor Muriel Bowser, Chairperson White, and the council, Morgan will remain a trusted navigator, returning citizens seeking a real second chance in the District of Columbia. Thank you, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. In December, my office sent Morka pre-hearing questions with a January 13th deadline. On that date, Morka requested additional time and indicated responses would be provided by January 14th or 15th. As of January 20th, we had not received responses despite multiple follow-ups that got no response. This is the second time in recent weeks where we expected information and wasn't given. We've had lack of communication from the agency, and I do understand transitions and capacity challenges, but I don't understand what's happening with the communication. What happened there?
I'm not quite sure, other than there's been some transition within leadership. I do know that we did submit those documentations. Yeah, I thought they were submitted. Maybe that's on me to double check with that to make sure that my staff make sure that I have all the information that I need.
Okay, we got responses, I think two nights ago. Yeah, and just not gotten responses from the agency as we've reached out. Now, I hope you know at this point, I want to move your nomination forward, speak favorably. It is hard for me to have confidence to say to my colleagues, this is who the council should approve if we can't get responses. So I need your word that whatever hiccups happen, you can get to the bottom of it and work with me and my team.
Yes.
Thank you. The Commission on Reentry and Returning Citizens Affairs is meant to give returning citizens and community members a voice in shaping reentry policy. Constituents have shared, actually, I think we heard from one of our witnesses today, that they don't know when the commission meets, who's on the commission, how to access meetings, or what work the commission is producing. The commission did not send a separate representative to today's hearing. So I'll have to direct questions to the mayor's representative, which is you. Where can residents find information about commission meetings, agendas, or how to participate?
Currently, as we spoke about in the past, the commission, we have had some issues with the commission, quite frankly, right? Whatever those issues were, so we understand the frustration of the community not being able to have access to the commission. However, we do realize the importance and the role that they play and the work that they do in terms of their advice for us. And we are actively pursuing people to fill in that seat, to fill in those seats, and to appoint them and to get this body, up and running as soon as possible. That is one of my tasks for next week. I kind of got, a few days after I get in, like this here and that here and this here. So there's been a lot of preparation, but that is top of mind type of agenda. However, when we get those seats filled, they will be able to go to our website and find the information. They will be able to see profiles of the individuals, right? They will have a forward-facing presentation to the community, and they will be accessible in that manner. I will say that I have acquired and spoken with quite a few people in the reentry community about that. However, as I look forward, I want it to be a representation of what the reentry returning citizen population look like, and not one-sided gender-wise, ethnicity-wise, but like a fair representation of that. And so, because I've been thinking of it that way, it's been a little bit of a delay because I put a little bit of intentionality in that. But my goal is that after these hearings and this week is to put my primary focus on establishing that commission.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I share your vision. You know, if you came back 20 years ago, your experience is different than, you know, if you came back, you know, within the past 12 months. Older folks, you know, have a different perspective. Women have been underrepresented on the commission for a long time. So so I like that and look forward to supporting that work. The, you know, something that I want to get back to, we had a good run and things fell apart, but we used to get concrete policy recommendations from the commission, and I look forward to quickly getting back to a place where we're getting those, because those are places we can work together, make real differences. And when people on the commission, they make recommendations and we work together to make them happen, then people feel like it's worth their time to be there. So I look forward to working through that over the next couple of months. The commission is intended to have 15 public voting members. It may be too many, I don't know. How many seats are currently vacant?
11. I think we have 4 that coming in. We had a meeting, just an introduction. There were 4 people at the meeting. So it became quite aware that this needs to be like tightened up. And so
And if you would work with the commission to understand if 15 is still the right number, even for now, because I think it's important that the right people on the commission, that's more important than having 15 people. I'm okay with 15, but you know, something ain't working, and you know, I'm open to recommendations. Because if the commission has 15 members, it's going to be hard to get a quorum. And so, you know, for various reasons, it's worth thinking. And we even if we move it, make it less than 15, we can move it back up. But just all that to say, let's kind of think outside the box. And I'm flexible. I just want to support the work that you and the commission are doing. When I went to get the cupcakes and candle for OTA at Safeway last night on my way home, a gentleman was in line behind me and recognized me, and he said he was returning citizen, been home for a while, doing well, but went through a DC program, got a CDL license, but is struggling to find work. So, you know, we fund these programs, but then on the back end, too often people can't find work. Do you know when he reaches out to my office, where should I direct him to find opportunity? He's done, you know, what he's supposed to do. He went through his program, got the license. Now he's trying to find work. Where should I direct him?
You can definitely direct them to our office. I think as we think about reentry and returning citizen and the various and how many times people come back for services to our office, that one, the reality is that at some point people have to be pushed through, right? But at another point that we should be able to fill in those work gaps that maybe exist by speaking with other people who may be interested in partnering with us to offer, other means of employment. And so I think when people return back to the office, such this person who you're talking about, there has to be a different level of intentionality when they come through the door, right? This so you would if you had a level one a client, then a level two client, like a level three client. It's like almost a step, a phasing system. And so, it's the treatment and the access and the urgency may be a little different than when we're dealing with clients at, just throughout these different stages. So it's not just, oh, I'm just coming back and I got to
Right.
run through the system all the way again to get to where I was at. It's like when I come back this time, that here's where I'm at, here's what I've done, and here's where I need that extra help at, right?
Yeah.
To get to that third tier. And then at that point, it's like, at some point we have to allocate resources, time, and spaces, and to other people at that first tier of engagement.
Right. That makes sense. Fully agree with that. We also need to make sure if we have job training programs and we're saying to people, do this program and we're spending money for the programs and we want to make sure there are opportunities on the back end. Now, if there are opportunities and people don't take them, that's one thing. But I do want to make sure there are opportunities. So for the CDL program that we pay for or have paid for, how do we ensure that there are opportunities on the back end?
I think our team, Ms. Sylvie can answer that.
Thank you for the question. We may be in a situation where our returning citizens may struggle to have a job, but the CDL field is the field that our population have more opportunities. I can tell for the cohort that we finished with our partner, 44 of them are graduated directly, 32 of them, they were certified and got a job because we have a large number of organizations and company looking for a CDL driver, a Class A and Class B. And I will encourage to continue this program because they help our population to move to the middle class directly and get a job. So this is one of a great program that we'll really emphasize to continue to work on because it really help our population to get a job.
So your data on the number of people who get into jobs after the program, is that subsidized employment or unsubsidized?
These are unsubsidized.
Unsubsidized. Okay. Okay. We may follow up just with more information on that. But that's good. If it was subsidized, I'd be more concerned. But I want to just make sure I do understand it. But we can work offline on that. There's a brother named Ray Bell who runs a program called the Hope Project. Did IT training, placed a lot of people into high-paying IT jobs. Many returning citizens, many young people who dropped out of school. Did the best he can reach out to me and other council members all the time. But eventually, Prince George's County just kept saying, hey, we want you to help our people because your track record is great. Then he started doing CDL, and he reaches out to me every few months to say, Robert, here are all the things happening in Prince George's County. Breaks my heart that it's not happening in DC. I hope you'll look at the program. Like, I can't compare them to other programs. I just happen to be familiar with this one. I've been to see it. I've seen their graduates come out making $60,000, $80,000. But it seems like we're missing some opportunities.
That is one of the things that we definitely want to focus on, where we are going to start looking at in terms of employment opportunities. For one, IT and technology in particular, it's a safe bet, right? It doesn't require a higher learning of education, right? So there's certification that people can go C++, et cetera. Most of the work is done remotely so that you don't have the background thing, right? Or that often gets in the way with returning citizens being on the workforce. And so as we think about what ways can we help our population, we consider all these different factors, right? And so we definitely want to begin cultivating partnerships and relationships with organizations like that, to have a stronger footprint in those places to direct returning citizens as they come through our office that we have multiple opportunities. I do know there's an IT program that's sponsored, I'm not mistaken, through UDC. So right, really pushing people towards that way. And that once again, that goes back to that tier level system, right? That tier level system. So if we, like Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? So it's like these basic things have to be met. And so that may be our tier 1 clients. So the focus is different, but we may have tier 2, tier 3 clients who are ready to, to take those incentives and kind of be unafraid to go out into different areas of the workforce and not feel so tied down to construction or blue collar work.
Yeah, agreed. Who on your team can talk about the status of the MOU with the Bureau of Prisons in our efforts to help create reentry plans before people come home?
Well, prior years, we have been able to secure the list. We built a partnership, but then when the new administration came in, they told us, I think recently, that it will not be moving forward. And so we are back at ground one, where we have to start to think strategically on how to communicate and build relationship across party lines to kind of see how we can get that conversation at least back started again. But we just received, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, that it has been haunted.
Okay. Look, at least they're being honest with it.
Yeah.
I've been climbing this hill for years.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, even in our recent conversation with regarding the halfway house, there were members from the BOP who were present, speaking, about the halfway house, and they pretty much made that statement across the board that this is not just exclusively, to return citizens, but like if there's some legalities, like, we're just not doing it. We're not touching it with data, stats, numbers. And so that is kind of a trend that is happening across other agencies, whether they be returning citizen related or not.
Okay. What about the CIC? I believe they get information on folks housed in BOP.
They do, but I think it's through being classified as something centered around law enforcement. So I'm not completely clear, but I think it's a clause in there that is centered around law enforcement, and so they're able to get it, or however their agency is positioned. But we have tried to figure out if we can get that information via that avenue, and it hasn't been successful either.
Okay.
And I think it's not because of them, but because they're just not within right or authority.
Okay. If this may be something that the mayor could work on with the White House. There is for all the policies in the White House, their policies and thoughts on reentry and incarceration are a little different than everything else. But this may be something that could get worked out with either, if she's in a meeting with the president or chief of staff, they may be able to help here. That's the only avenue I see right now, is that if you become aware of an impending meeting, you might work to get this on the list. That just might be one of those rare things we could work together with this administration on.
And also I researched that information, and I did a nationwide search. That is a nationwide trend with the FBOP. I'm talking about with the Pew Institute, like all the really big data analytic groups. And the reason why they don't the BOP in itself don't aggregate or track those numbers, because of the determination of where someone is placed upon release. And so what has been the trend throughout, for at least since 2015, I think the last recorded data or information about prisoners released from prison, the state does a better job, the local does a better job, the county does a better job. However, the federal government and the way that they do their tracking system, they only track because if you're from Texas everybody's there pretty much from Texas, but in the federal system, you have people from all across the United States. And so the data that they have, they say that it's just too much to determine if somebody's actually from Texas when they're released, or did they just catch their case in Texas and count as a Texas inmate.
I see.
Yeah, so even though, we can work and continue
Yeah.
to push that and ask for that,
Sure.
historically across the United States, that's been an issue with criminal justice.
That seems like an easily solvable problem. I mean, not one that you or I could solve, but
Yeah.
like, they can figure out where people are from. But I hear you on that. The halfway house. I'm so angry about this halfway house. Like, yeah, I can't say what's on my heart. They're playing in our face. I just like, I don't know what else to do, but I do know that I can't be the only one saying like this is crazy at this point. What can Morca do to help light a fire under Core DC?
At this point, I wouldn't know exactly what to do. That's I'm still getting, briefed about where we at with that process and dates.
But it matters, right? Whether we have a halfway house in DC.
It definitely matters. 100%.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to pray on that one because, yeah.
That picture was as late as of
Within the past 24 hours.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's today. Yeah. So, the budget, I'm concerned about Morgan's budget. So as far as we can tell on our end, about a third of the budget got swept by the EOM, and I don't know why or how. So what happened?
You can.
So it does appear that way, like just looking at it blank. However, for transparency, we haven't lost any funding. It has, with us being kind of absorbed within EOM, some of our grants are now managed by Serve DC, which is all community-based grants are held. And so some of our funding is held there now under kind of Morca's cost center. As well as a portion of the paralegal program. And that was due to our previous classification of it being classified as a grant. And so it was located there, but it will be reallocated back to Morca's cost center. But when being the person who overseen the grant, we haven't received any decreases. We have actually got appears to be a little increase. And so it looks that way flat, but when, because I was just as concerned, but when we did the cost of it being, and we still have we still are managing those grants and have oversight over those grants as well. It's just placed with our sister agency.
Okay. Okay. Makes me nervous, but okay. I want to talk about some regulatory barriers. Morca indicated in the pre-hearing questions that it faces no regulatory impediments, but also reported that STEER Act related changes have limited ticket relief and driver's license reinstatement. For residents, obviously, this translates directly into missed job opportunities and transportation barriers. Can you give me some clarity on what's happening with the STEER Act, how it's impacting your clients?
We were notified by CCU, Central Collection Unit, that due to a law, the STEER Act, which is centered around safety,
that that there are some policies that kind of strip the program of allowing some of the traditional ways in which our population gets tickets. And so a lot of our individuals are not qualified, and then there was also some restraints on time frame of what returning citizens can use it. We are working with the executive office of the mayor to kind of iron this out, as well as trying to have some conversations with the agency to work some of those out to see if there is any wiggle room, because it has allowed relief, and like as you said, it helps with employment, it helps with stabilizing our family and in a unique way.
Would you keep us posted? I want to be helpful if you need our help in sorting through this, because folks can't pay tickets, they lose their license. You lose
Right.
your license, often you can't get to work.
And we've been trying to give our new director a little bit of a break,
Yep.
but we have some agendas, we have some things on his agenda once we get through this season.
Okay.
And so we want to give him a chance to kind of have those discussions as well.
Yeah. Yes,
Mhm.
indeed. I want to move to key metrics and SMART goals as we did with the Office of Tenant Advocates in all of our agencies. More SMART goals from the prior fiscal year to analyze the performance of MORCA in meeting those goals and think about the upcoming year's goal. The first goal was to strengthen partnerships across service sectors. For returning citizens, partnerships only matter if they change what happens when someone asks for help, like whether they get a ride to work, access mental health care, receive timely referrals. And while MORCA reports a high number of partnerships, residents and advocates have limited visibility in what these partnerships actually deliver, how reliable they are, whether they result in successful outcomes. We heard some of that in testimonies today. So the reported results that we have are on transportation, 14 partnerships, on food assistance, 12 partnerships, on clothing, 11 partnerships, on mental health, 13 partnerships. For these partnerships, what are your clients actually receiving? And how you measure this, like the outcomes?
Yes, I have the SNAP goals in here. Yes. You talking about? Oh. So the services, depending on what the clients are being referred for food resources, they're either being referred to receive benefits from the Department of Human Services or from some of our community partners. If it's in reference to employment, we utilize our in-house resources. For housing and mental health, we use our community-based resources where they're receiving services from some of our community partners.
Okay. Some witnesses mentioned the idea of or need for referral tracking, so that we have a sense, you have a sense of outcomes, like, who are the partners that are helping, do we need to look beyond the partnerships? How do you track referrals at this point?
So right now we have a peer navigation unit who follows up with all of our clients to see how the outcomes were for the referrals. So they will contact the clients directly to see if they were able to receive the resources that they were referred to, be it their ID or their birth certificate, if it was the food services or the mental health treatment. They make calls every day to clients to obtain that information. We also contact our partners. One of the partners we had in here today was Jubilee Housing, to get direct information from them. We send them the number of referrals with the names, and they will contact us back to give us data on that information.
Okay. And so how would the public or the council know what data do you collect? So I get the information, but how does that translate into data?
So we put some of that information into our reports, the reports that we put out monthly and yearly.
So currently, we're using a traditional Excel spreadsheet that we are definitely in the process of identifying strengths and weaknesses within that spreadsheet and to clarify the data to make it very clear for us. We're also using QuickBase as well, which is kind of tracking our KPIs. So becoming familiar with those systems. As we've said before, and we continue to stand on that, we talk in the same love language when it comes to data and transparency and numbers. And so I do want to say that we are tracking how many people, we have TANF, SNAP, we're tracking that. We haven't had the luxury to have a particular system that other offices may have to be more specific and data focused and driven. And so we're creating a system with the tools that we have that are very effective in giving council, the public, and everyone else the numbers that they need to see exactly what we're doing and when we're doing that.
Okay. I mean, obviously, we got to give a little grace because you're just coming in. Let's work together on this. I want the agency to thrive. I want the agency to look good, but look good even with scrutiny, right? So looking good doesn't mean that all your data points are stellar. It means you're tracking the right thing, catching what's working, what's not working, and would just love to work cooperatively on this because I think we're sort of pointing in the same direction. And my job when things are working well, my job is to support our agencies just looking good. Okay. And we will drill into these in our budget hearings as well. So let's aim to work between now and then on this, even if we're not quite finished. Hopefully, we can be most of the way there.
Right. And we will, for the records, I do know we have that information with the SMART goals. That was kind of one of the things that I really wanted to talk about because we did have specific data to what was from FY24 to FY25 and what that looked like and how the team has been able to not only meet some of those goals, but also to exceed in some of them. I think there was a question as to workforce and how many people we're getting into workforce development. And I think the number that was given to me was kind of low, so it's kind of easy to exceed such a low number, but it kind of created a baseline that if we can exceed here, then we can additionally add 10, 20 more people to that number and hopefully, reach, some of those same outcomes. So I know the team, they work really hard on that. And I looked at the previous before. I just don't have it memorized. But I do know that they put a lot of time and effort to making sure that the team were tracking those SMART goals to present today. So we can present that written at another time.
I appreciate it.
Attachment. Yep.
Perfect. And then we'll schedule some time to meet on it and talk through it. And I think it's when folks are operating, teams are operating at their best, you're setting ambitious goals, and you can't both want people to set ambitious goals and embarrass them if they don't meet the ambitious goals. So you got to set ambitious goals, you got to support them, and aim to get there. But sometimes you're not going to hit those goals, and you're not going to get static from this committee if you set an ambitious goal and don't quite get there. So I look forward to working with you. If you would send that as a follow up, and then we'll find some time to meet and walk through.
Sounds good.
Perfect. With referrals or service delivery from partner agencies, are there any common issues that slow those things down or cause hiccups?
What?
Can you repeat the question?
So with referrals with referrals, are there any things that typically slow things down or cause snags? Like, hey, someone came in, we want to refer them for housing, but they don't, have an ID, or, are there any common issues that you've seen at this point?
Yeah, I think as we think, I think we have to think about how we are exchanging information with each other, how we are establishing the correct points of contacts with people, how we communicating with other agencies, with other organizations. So I think one of the biggest things that we are finding is that the lack of communication or the breakdown of communication to give people the exact resources and a more appropriate timely. And I think that's one of the things that the community that this is the thing that they see the work that we do in the office and they say, well, this thing is not getting done because, they're coming to the office and the office is not pushing that. Oftentimes, if with the BOP, if we can't get the data, we can't get the data, so we can't give the service. So a lot of times, the pitfall is like, how are we communicating? One of the things that I did, was thinking about and coming into this role in this position is creating like an intergovernmental I don't want to call it a council or commission or something like that, but like a round table, right? Where our major service providers, people who are directly involved with the returning citizen population, are having monthly conversations about how do we better support each other? How do we better get our people through our own, agencies to make sure that they, so we don't have these breakdowns of communication. So that's probably the biggest thing. It's like, how are we communicating? Who's communicating with us? Because, we heard earlier that no one is tracking what happens with the people who come through our agencies, but even if they're a smaller organization, but oftentimes it'd be nice if they provided us with some information as well to help us with the tracking system. So it has to be two-sided. It has to be, it has to go hand in hand. And so I think that's one of the biggest barriers. Another barrier is that how much time that as was pointed out, none of us are mental health practitioners.
Yeah.
That's just what it is, right? But I can say, there's always at least no less than two major outbursts that happens, right? And so here's the unique thing about that is we see, so in our building, we have security, armed security, right?
Yeah.
You have to come to a metal detector, right? That's the last resolution, that's kind of counting, right? What's the
Yeah.
message in there, in that?
Yep.
And so that's the last thing that, we want to do is like call security, right?
Yeah.
And so our team spend a lot of time taking it all the way to the end, to all the way de-escalation.
Yeah.
Right? And there are some rare moments when that can't happen. And so sometimes we have a room full of people, like we have to de-escalate, a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. That's an hour taken away from somebody who has to get back to the halfway house, who's now becoming anxious because they're getting ready to get
Yeah.
back on the road to go to Baltimore and they got to catch a bus. So those are some of the things, some of the biggest challenges that we have, like de-escalating issues that come in, the way we communicate with other agencies and other organizations and our partners. So we looking at ways like how do we kind of nail that down a little bit? And that goes back to that data, looking at the numbers, like how many people are coming here with this? Is this common trend? Do we need to get DHS here more and have a different conversation with them? Do we need to look into the program that they may already have that exists within inside of government to make the primary referral there, and then they can make the referral back once individuals are stabilized.
Yeah.
But the last thing that we want to do is to have somebody escorted out of the returning citizen office, right? That's so
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do think we've got to figure out some counseling support to help in that. I understand. Second SMART goal for FY25, and this is something that there was some testimony on today, which is housing for returning citizens. The original target was to place 30 returning citizens in semi-permanent or permanent housing. The results that were reported to us were 26 housing vouchers coordinated, 8 placements with Jubilee Housing, and 3 home purchases. Those make me a little nervous because if the goal is 30 and 26 are taken care of with housing vouchers, that just doesn't leave a lot of, requirements for creativity and sort of problem solving there.
That data solely highlights just our vouchers, and I don't know we have it on hand right now, but we can get it to you afterwards, where some of our individuals we do have data where we have some that has gone into transitional housing, congregate housing, unfortunately, sometimes shelter, for emergency housing, and we have had 3 homeowners. And so we do have more data, and we probably didn't highlight it best and doing those questions, but we can get that data to you.
Okay, I appreciate it. And just the amount that this issue comes to us, we've got to figure it out. I know we have one proposal that came to our committee for housing, but essentially paying people to house the returning citizens. There are, I think that the bill is not perfect, but maybe onto something. But we have to find some more creative solutions there, because that housing need is just so big for this community.
Trying in the past, we've tried, I think Director Shakir has also highlighted, just trying to build capacity within our partners and those who want to kind of get in this space. And so I know right now, one of the biggest funders is CSOSA. And so trying to connect some of our individuals who do have the financial and capacity to open up transitional homes, to kind of connect them with those funders as well. And so we're trying to look at not just the ones, the current landscape, but how do we increase and add to that.
Okay. And there's some folks who do a lot of work in the returning citizen community that have purchased buildings, and are trying to figure out, all right, how can I figure out funding? So we've just got to continue to put our heads together to figure this one out. Housing costs a lot of money, so it's not an easy one to figure out. For Jubilee, what type of housing does Jubilee provide? Is it transitional or permanent?
They have transitional housing. They're also in the process of building an apartment building where individuals can rent apartments
Okay.
that are low and affordable.
Okay. Is that the one that's coming online soon? Do you know?
Yes,
Okay.
that one I believe is going to be in the next 30 to 60 days.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay. And for the 3 individuals who purchased homes, were those referrals to the HPAP program or? Okay.
Those are the ones who actually purchase home. But through our first-time home buyers, we have 3 that are further along the process of close to purchasing a home too. So we're keeping track on those as well.
That's excellent. Okay. I want to think through with you all and my team some other creative solutions. There may be there may be an opportunity, say, to give landlords a certain bump, a few $100s if they rent to returning citizens. I mean, that would only address really discrimination. That wouldn't address the cost of housing. But I have to believe there are some solutions that we can still hit on. So we'll work with you all on that. Continuing through the SMART goals, the next one was to expand employment and training opportunities. Obviously, job placement numbers matter, but neighbors care most about job stability, income growth, and whether employment lasts. The committee is focused on whether programs align with real labor demand and whether people remain employed long enough to support themselves and their families, and I know the agency does as well. So the original target for this goal was to place 100 returning citizens in training programs and place 50 into employment. The training program placement exceeded the target, I believe, by 600%. Job placements exceeded the target by 400, a little over 400%. Partners included DPW, Career Shop DC, Events DC, Goodwill, Aramark, and some others. And Morka also partnered with ABCA on a How to Open a Lounge program, but no returning citizens, I believe, ultimately completed the process. Why was this program launched?
The lounge, to kind of, like Director Shakir said, to kind of give a focus to our second tier individuals who not just coming in for the baseline of like immediate service. And so it was an interest from the population. And I think that what the previous director is just trying to kind of, at that moment, resources were limited just across the US, I guess, in general. And so trying to think of like, how do we bring the resources from the government to the community? And so it was well attended. And so right now we are conducting follow-up on those individuals to figure out where they are and if they're stuck in the process. We didn't launch that too long ago, and so we don't have a ton of data, but we do look, we are going to follow back up. But it was definitely received well from the community based on the attendance.
Okay.
Mhm.
You got to listen to the community and you got to try new things. So look forward to hearing if it produces results or if it makes sense to pivot away at some point. Another program was, and I think 72 people participated in the vendor readiness program. Do you happen to know outcomes for that program at this point?
Do we have any?
The fair, we have an outcome, so many of our population that we all make sure that before we refer them to employment, we make sure they have the attendance of job readiness programs. And those that we refer to are the trainings, so they have, we make sure the provider directly, they connect them to employment. And the majority of them, they had an opportunity of be connecting to employment. As we said, we partner with a large of job providers and trainers who provide the trainings and connect directly to employment. So we have it tomorrow, we're gonna have another, like a recruitment of a career job DC, and they're coming to recruit like 20 people for carpentry jobs. They'll give them skill for 3 weeks, and after that, they will connect them to employment directly because they have a partnership with a construction company. That's the kind of partnership that we continue to really elevate for us to make a strong, to
And
make
for
the
the,
readiness.
I think to your vendor, the
Yeah,
vendor
the vendor,
question.
yeah.
And so while we probably don't, well, so I'm realizing we may not have it at the moment. What we can do is, through our follow-up question, is reach out to those individuals through our sign-in sheet, and kind of see where they are, and we can tailor what's the next steps as far as those individuals. And so we did launch it, but with the transition, we do need to kind of follow back up
Okay.
with those individuals.
I appreciate it. If you intend to continue the program, then bless you. Then let us know what you find in terms of success rates so far. In the Perfect Brush program, do you have any information on that program? How well it worked or is working?
So that one, we got to kind of witness the painters, one, get to tell their story on how their art and their creativity, as well as seeing them sell their art. And so I don't think any of them left without being able to sell their art. And then I think recently, I can't remember they participated in a art auction through a nonprofit. And so it opened up another opportunity, just that exposure.
Yeah.
And it's one more that I'm forgetting of another opportunity that I'm blanking on right now, but I can definitely get that to you. And so the goal was just to kind of show returning citizens in a wide scope of, in just different light. And so while also increasing and providing them with an audience and platform. And so it did open up more opportunities.
Okay.
Mhm.
I know there's been some discussion between you all and my team around the SMART goals, which I think are important. Do you still have concerns about working together to set SMART goals, Director?
No, I don't have I know that we're using, I mean, I think it's good for discussion. I think using SMART goals, I think is very good for discussion to say we have identified certain things and we need to track them and using that. However, in addition to that, we will be tracking other things as well. As I'm listening to, as we talk and we collaborate with my team, I think more about, okay, when we have programs, when we initiate programs, it's one thing to say, hey, we have a program and we have, people go through a program and, it was a good time, had fun, but is this program attached to some form of employment or some further training? And so these are discussions that, that my team and I, we've had in recent weeks as to how do we look at the programs that we have. So we need that actually that quick base system to see and that referral and going back and making those phone calls, just being transparent with the transition. We definitely up to staff. We have our staff ups, like really catching up on where we need to be, making sure. So I just want people to know, if you haven't heard from us, it's not because we've been neglectful, but it's just been a transition, and we are definitely have people on, that's bringing us up to speed. And I just mentioned to say that in doing that, we going back, it's like some people, we don't want no one to get through the cracks.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we need to go back and make sure that there's a follow through here, there's an outcome there, there's a specific deadline, timeline, or if there's need for further resources. If that hasn't been done, it's only because of this transition in the holidays and the hearing. So it's not neglect on the agency's part, but we intend to definitely, that's like order of the day, that all hands on deck when it comes to finding where people are at to catch up with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sensitive to all the things that you got to take on when you transition to the top of an agency. So understood, and certainly you all, I think all agencies maybe have their own KPIs. That is fine. The SMART goals are in line with the core mission of the agency. Shouldn't be a distraction, but also just help us stay focused on what are the primary things we're measuring. We're going to hold you accountable for. We're working together on. It keeps us all focused.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
excellent. So we will work together between now and the budget hearing on those. The agencies drive those, though. But if they're like ambiguous, don't make any sense, then we push back. But if they don't actually measure anything, we push back. But it's not like we try to impose, on the agency. You need me? What's the best? We'll follow up after this hearing. I'd like to make sure we understand the best way to reach you, so that communications don't slip through. But those are all the questions I have. We don't have a ton of follow-ups from today's hearing, but how much time do you need for those?
But I think
it depends on how many questions.
So you had the SMART goals.
The things that we said, well, no, not the SMART goals. Those will be between now and the budget hearing.
Yeah,
But
the
some of the
housing.
things you said,
The housing data we have.
that's right.
I think it should be no more like next week.
Give us like 2 weeks, just because we still are having some. There's some meetings we have. There's some.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. So
Okay.
about a 2 week. Yeah.
All right.
So that would be February 5th. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you again for being with us today. Anybody in the agency that's listening, thank you for the work that you're doing. And I want to thank our public witnesses and government witnesses for being with us today. And want to mention that if anyone was unable to testify, written testimony is encouraged and will be made part of the official record. So anyone who is interested can submit additional testimony through the dedicated webpage for this hearing on the council's hearing management system. If you don't know where to find that, you can contact the Committee on Housing at housing@dccouncil.gov or call 202-727-8270 and we will help. The record for this hearing will remain open until the close of business 2 weeks from today on Thursday, February 5th. If anyone listening is interested in learning more about the work of this committee in my office, please sign up to hear from us at robertwhiteatlarge.com. That concludes the committee's business for today. The time is 6:08 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned.